Hello, everybody. Welcome. Tesla is down 5%. Overall markets are down about 1 to 2%. I see Omar in the crowd, Meta. Let's bring them up. All news day. We have nothing to talk about today. I don't know what we're going to talk about. Omar, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. I'm driving back from Coachella, so I'm gonna be in the car all day, driving through mountains and shit. So I don't know how my connection will be, but I'm here.
Well, I mean, ever since you got your Cybertruck, it sounds like you're living in it. You're living in it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's the
Have
best
you ever left
Tesla.
it? Have you ever gone outside of the Cybertruck
A
since then?
little bit. I mean, it's 3,640 miles so far.
And how long have you had it?
I think 1 month, 45 days.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're averaging almost like, 70, 80 miles a day on average. That's incredible.
That I drive sometimes to test FSD.
So you're living in a Tesla at all times, basically. Like, why do you even have a house? And
Exactly. Who needs a house?
yeah, cancel the mortgage payment, the rent payment. About Tesla, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Yaman. How are you doing?
Doing well. What's the latest on FSD rollout?
So, as I posted earlier, we are above 50% of the US and Canada on the latest version. So it's basically, it's really went wide. So the cars have now V12, that's 3.4. Half of the cars in the US have that version installed. Of course, it doesn't mean that they use it so or activated it, but at least they can. And if we add all other V12 versions, so we're now above 65, around 65% of the V12 penetration to the fleet. That's based on the TSLA data, and I'm filtering it to show just the US installed versions, because if you just look at the percentages that TSLA shows or some other sites show, they look at the global fleet, and that's really misleading. So I look at each version to see what the US and Canada penetration is, and then based on that, I can see what the percentage of the fleet has each version.
Thank you very much. Omar, should we kind of start out slow with, let's say, the FSD subscription price tagging?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think it's going to do? I mean, we kind of talked about it earlier in previous, speculated about the price coming down a little bit. What do you think about that change?
Well, I think it's actually palatable for people. I think people can subscribe it and swallow the pill. It's a good compromise between, it's a high value subscription, but it's low enough that anyone who has a Tesla can probably afford it. So we talked about, 50% of the user base being on FSD within a year. I'm feeling pretty good about that bet at this point.
Who did you make a bet with on that?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of people agree with you on that one. 50% of users by the end of the year being on FSD in one way or another. So you do think that
Before the price change, a lot of people didn't agree with me. And their big hang up was pricing. They said, how are we going to get people to convert at that price? And now that the pricing question is out of the way, I think that's good. Although I'm still going to buy my FSD in full, as crazy as that sounds.
you think, sorry, you said you're going to buy it? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I have 2 Teslas right now. Both of them have FSD paid in full. I've always paid for my FSD in full, and I'm going to continue to do that in the future.
Okay, great. Do you think the price for the purchase is going to come down?
Subscription price is only for really the current month. They can change it at any time. As the software starts getting super useful, as it starts providing a lot of value, it's not going to be $99 a month. So every time I've bought FSD, it's ended up being a great deal. Like I bought it for $7,000 on my Model 3 Performance in 2020. Here we are in 2024, and I'm still using that same FSD package transferred onto my Model S. So that $7,000 has stretched me for many, many months where I didn't have to pay $99. And I can just keep using it every month. I don't have to pay. I can pay it off, and I'm done paying. I'm not at the mercy of paying whatever Tesla decides they want to charge for it this month.
All right. Any questions, comments? I know everybody in here right now to learn about the new subscription price of FSD. It's $99, everybody. So now that you have your answer, you can leave. But don't know what else to talk about today. The markets are down. I mean, I think one thing people kind of should keep in mind is even though the stock is down 5%, the markets are down. Nasdaq is down 2%, and obviously Tesla has a beta of about 2x. So, I would say majority of the decline today is explained by the overall market declines. Omar, what do you think about these layoffs?
I think they're making less cars than they did a year ago. Okay. So why do you need more people to make less cars? This is what happens. You're making less cars, you're making less money. We got to cut some people. That's the unfortunate reality of it. And, just going back to that video of Karpathy again, where he talks about Elon's management style, they believe let people go by default, right? You want the company to be people who are in wartime mode, people who are fighting, and asking every once in a while, hey, who's essential here and who's not essential? And if we had to lose 10%, who would that be? And, I think in Drew's case, he said, look, if I had to tell you who's the least important 10% of the 4680 team, it's me. And just based on the wording on his tweet, he said, I made the choice to leave. So I think when Elon told him, who are we letting go? He said, me. And, I think that's kind of admirable in a way. I think he's worked at Tesla for 18 years. Obviously, a huge loss. He's been an incredible person, but sometimes it's good to bring some fresh blood in. They've gotten 4680 to the point where it's shipping. They need to scale it to the next level. Many times in Tesla's past, they've done layoffs. Did it ever ruin the company? No. It always actually made the company stronger. So I think there's a lot of panic from people who don't really understand the company and how it's managed. They're a flat organizational style. You remember when they asked that question to Kropotkin, they said, you know the joke. American rowing team has 3 people steering and 1 person rowing. When they lost the race, they fired the rower, right? So sometimes with a flat organizational structure like this, the people who are really running the company are the people actually doing things. You don't have layers and layers of managers and that type of thing. So it's a very different management philosophy, but I mean, it's not really surprising. Companies making less money, you let go of some people, and now the company will make more money. And it kind of helps the organization, I think, ultimately grow stronger. So it's a tough thing. It's a sad thing. A lot of great people are going to get let go. I mean, Drew's amazing. Rohan's amazing. That, it is shocking. I wouldn't have expected to see them go, but the world moves on. And we thank them
Yeah.
for their service, and we welcome in the new people who are going to carry the torch forward.
All right, Sawyer, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, one is, shout out to the 10% of employees that got laid off today and helped push Tesla's mission forward. It's sad to see them go, but I just put out a post. We've seen many Tesla layoffs over the years, and I think a lot of people that are in the Tesla investor community now weren't really around for the larger layoffs in 2018 and 2019 when it was 9%, 7%. And from 2018 to 2024, Tesla's headcount grew from 38,000 to 140,000. And as Omar said, they're not making as many cars as they were before. And I think ever since FSD 12 came out, I really feel like Elon is even more bullish on FSD and wanting to just go all in on robotics, autonomy, and AI. That he feels like he wants Tesla to set itself up for its next phase of growth, and that required some restructuring and reorganization. And it really sucks to see Rohan obviously leave just when we felt like he was such a great sort of an unofficial Tesla spokesperson on X. I feel like he really listened to the retail community and would hear our complaints or our feedback and actually instill some change within the company when it was appropriate. And of course, Drew, he's probably next to Elon, was probably the longest tenured employee there, still left after 18 years. That's pretty nuts. The average length of like an executive, and I think in Silicon Valley is only like 2 to 4 years. So 18 is pretty nuts. Um, Having said that, I understand like he has $100 million in stock. He's been there 18 years. And if Elon is wanting to just go all in on AI robotics and stuff, and it's going to require really long hours and tough years ahead, maybe Drew was just like, you know what? Maybe it's just time for me to go. It's just me speculating, but from 2016 to 2022, we saw over 50 executives and high-ranking people depart. That was everything from JB Straubel, he was the co-founder. Of course, we had Jerome, we had 2 CFOs, um, VPs, heads of AI, Andre, of course. So I think in these moments, people tend to default to like panic and be like, "Oh my God, is there structural things that are wrong with the company?" But I still see a really deep bench of talent and expertise. And this is not to say it's not going to be a bumpy road ahead. I do think Tesla's in a really difficult period. I do think not enough people know how good their cars are, and I don't see them doing enough about it. Having said that, I still think the long-term prospects of the company are strong, and we'll see what happens.
Meta.
I think there can be many reasons why somebody's leaving, disagreements, whatever, that I think they're easy to blow up. But what's important to notice is he stayed there 18 years. He could have left on disagreements in the past. He's obviously not broadcasting a grievance. He's got kids. A lot of people who have kids know that there's a certain age range during which you want to bond with your kids. So I think it's completely reasonable for him to leave during that time. The fact that he's announcing it in a coordinated way, the fact that most of the projects are in a healthy state, I think are all positive signals. And when JB left, he left Drew in charge, and Drew did a good job. When Drew's leaving, he's probably going to leave somebody else in charge who's also going to do a good job.
Machine.
I think most of the speakers so far are reasonable in the fact that Tesla's had layoffs many times before. There's nothing inherently super bad about having layoffs. I do think you have to take the context of where the company is with regards to the slow ramping of their facilities right now because of demand issues, and you're going to cut costs in that case and potentially cut some production down. So I don't view layoffs as a cause of anything. They're just a symptom of what's already been happening that some people refuse to see, which is limited demand. And it just highlights potentially some issues for the near future in terms of demand growth. I do think it may be partly a pivot by Musk into focusing more on FSD, robotaxi, which some people will see as very bullish, and some investors might see as too risky. So that's a question for how the market's going to respond to this. But I do believe that that might be part of this. With regards
Absolutely.
to specific people like Drew, I find the always optimistic takes to be funny, just because like there's a practical common sense aspect to this stuff. When people say they're leaving to go spend times with their family, and you can say, well, they have little kids, like of course they would do that. Yeah, everyone says that when they leave. Okay, that's always what they say. I'm taking time off to spend time with my family. It doesn't mean it. It could be correct. It could also not be correct. So, I don't know if Drew got fired or he quit or what, but it's not. He seemed like a useful person, so you can't say it's a great thing he left. Usually, people at Tesla or SpaceX, if they're valued highly, when they want to quit, they're offered a sabbatical of 3 to 4 months, where at least I think their healthcare and all that are paid for, and usually take it up on them because there's no loss to them. So I know people who've done this. We know Carpathy did this, and then he still left, right? Because they're like, well, I might as well take the sabbatical and then I'll leave. We didn't hear anything about that for Drew. I don't know if he had a sabbatical and we
Right.
never heard about it, or was not one offered. So that is a little curious. In the big picture, it probably doesn't matter. I'm more focused on what is the outside of FSD, like what is the true kind of value the company's providing in the next few years, and that the layoffs just kind of signal to me partially that they're maybe reducing production a bit, which I don't know, not great, but
Yeah.
expected.
So thank you. Very good takes from everybody. In times like this, when we have lots of news and a lot of people in space, I try to focus on speakers who are regular visitors, regular speakers to minimize noise. Later on, we'll open up for questions. But in the meantime, if you'd like to leave a question or a comment, you may do so in a reply to the space or on YouTube Live as well, while I'm monitoring both of those. And if I see something very good, insightful, I'll ask the person to come up. Jeff, welcome. How are you?
Hey, good. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have brought up a lot of really relevant points already. I just joined the space. I'll say is I don't believe the layoffs are some sort of flat trimming exercise. I believe Tesla is being targeted themselves. They are being targeted in terms of restructuring the company into where they see the puck going. The hockey term, skate where the puck is going. So I don't believe this is like, oh, we're trimming the low performers here and there, and we need to save money. We're not shipping as many cars. I believe this is a targeted restructuring exercise. And notice I don't believe the requisitions have been pulled down in any dramatic manner, which means they're expanding in areas and then they're contracting in other areas. And that's what happens. This is what companies do. Sometimes senior leaders don't agree, or they look at themselves and kind of say, like, am I the right person to be a part of what's next? And it doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that they're good. It doesn't mean anything. Drew's a good human. I've met him before. Very good person. These are good people. And this is more of, probably a self-assessment of like, where's the company going? How can I help? And if it's going in a pretty like dramatic direction, by the way, I mean, Elon's even commented on highly differentiated compensation based on the autonomy team, meeting, um, these goals. I mean, this is really all about how do you pay for this talent? How do you acquire this talent for where the company is going? And it's not saying like the talent that got the company to where it is today and making all this money, shipping all these cars wasn't a great thing. And these aren't great people that won't do great things at new companies. It's just more about the identity and the future identity of where it's shifting
Right.
to. And that's where some of these some more abrupt changes. I'll pause
Right.
there.
Thank you. Omar, then Machine, then Meta.
I think the big picture here is really that this is a company that has achieved a breakthrough in self-driving. You're seeing people recognize pretty universally that what they've done here with the end-to-end approach, it's starting to actually leapfrog Waymo. And you look at, for example, the Grok 1.5 vision preview and some of the spatial reasoning there. And it's just kind of like, wow, this thing is not only going to be able to drive well, it's actually going to understand the world and have background info and context, the kind of things that you know about from Twitter. And you realize, okay, this is really kind of taking off. So, yes, you have some issues in the core automotive business. You have a year-over-year sales decline, but you also have to spend $2 billion this year on training compute. So you're making less money, you're spending more on training compute, and something has to give. To spend more money on training compute, I think you have to spend less elsewhere. As Jeff said, it's kind of a very targeted restructuring. And I think this is really all about FSD now. If they can knock it out of the park with FSD, they don't need any demand. There's no demand problem ever. And immediately sales will start to spike of their current product offerings. So the company is now the FSD company. Everything is focused on FSD and making it a success.
Machine.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. That definitely means expect a lot of volatility in the stock over the next few years because FSD is something that's going to be totally sentiment driven in terms of the perception of how good it is. I would say just from this is definitely anecdote. But remember, I mentioned 2 weeks ago they had the Tesla recruiter specifically message me about a specific position with Tesla Energy. And when I gave him my resume, then there was no follow up, which I would normally not. I don't care either way. I didn't even think about it. But that's kind of abnormal that they didn't even say anything after that. So now I'm thinking, oh, did they like?
Maybe they read your resume.
It's possible, but
They usually read the resume before they reach out.
Yeah, I mean they already kind of evaluate that. So I'm just saying from my history that's odd, and so now I'm wondering if it was like, oh, we intended to hire and now there's a pause. And my only other comment then is I noticed Drew Blaglino. I don't know if I noticed this before. On his LinkedIn profile, it says he's in Santa Cruz. Did he not move to Texas, or did he go to Texas and realize it's a shithole? Why would I go there? Why would I stay there if I could live in my like ocean
When was the
view
last time
house?
you were in Austin? When was the last time you were in Austin?
It's just a cesspool.
amazing.
It's wet.
It's
Okay.
amazing.
Have you been to
You're
Santa
missing
Cruz?
out.
Santa Cruz is like 65 degrees, 70 degrees and sunny in the ocean. Why would you live in the middle of Austin? It's just like the
You
armpit
have
of
no
North
idea.
America.
Why don't you come here and I'll give you a tour. Meta?
I'm pretty sure he never left California for what it's worth. But there's this concept in software called Conway's Law, which is your code ends up looking like your organization's. And it's considered a very bad thing. One way to fight that is to reorganize your organizations in the way you need to structure your code. This is obviously true for many things in organizations beyond just code. And so I think as you look forward, the powertrain's pretty much accomplished. The cell manufacturing, I think, has been greatly de-risked. At this point, Drew could look at it and say, I think most of the things that were high risk have been handled. Now is a good time if I want to step down, kind of like when Andre Karpathy left, when Tesla Vision, was at a similar space. If he doesn't leave now, then the alternative is for him to take on another project, which he's obviously capable, that would present itself will come.
Adrian.
If I may kind of like address the Austin situation. I've recently been there. Really, really good place. Very clean, very nice people. It's a weird place for sure. And I think that's good. Keep Austin weird. But I don't understand why there's any kind of like negative sentiment around it. And on top of that, I think it's actually a really good time, especially for real estate investors, to actually consider Austin, because there's new infrastructure literally being built before your eyes. They have new skyscrapers that are coming in. I've seen them myself. It's incredible. Like, this whole place is a boom town, and many of the major companies that are making a lot of money and are developing products that are crucial for humanity's future are all moving to Texas, most of which are now also in Austin. So it's a huge boom town. You have to imagine that a lot of the people who have very much a huge sway in humanity's future all live in this city. Imagine, for instance, people who have next level control of the information economy, like, say, for instance, Joe Rogan, someone such as Lex Friedman, someone such as, of course, Elon himself. They all live in Austin. There has to be a reason for this. And I recently went there, and it's an amazing fucking place to be. Even if sure, you do have a few homeless people there, but I don't think I've seen any next level crackheads. so that's fine. That's fine. I think you'll be perfectly fine in Austin. It's a beautiful place.
Right. Omar.
I love Drew. I've talked to him at some events. I think he's been a great guy. He's contributed immensely to Tesla over the last 18 years. But I just think it's funny that when JB left, everybody said, oh my God, JB's leaving, the co-founder of Tesla. How are we ever going to survive without him? And who the hell is this Drew guy? Now Drew's leaving, then everybody's freaking out that he's leaving, and there's no way they can transition again. And frankly, if I'm going to be honest, does Tesla have the best battery and drivetrain in the world? Look at BYD. Look at what they're doing, making all their own batteries and producing a shit ton of them. Tesla's got like a few 4680s, making a few thousand Cybertruck units. I mean, that's impressive to some extent that they're even making their own batteries. But imagine if we had more 4680s. Imagine if Model 3 could qualify for the tax credit. Do we have the best, most efficient electric drivetrain in the world? I don't think so. I think Lucid actually has a better drivetrain. So why don't we? I mean, if we had like 500-mile EVs or some shit, maybe we'd be selling more EVs, right? So, yes, it's a loss to have Drew, but is he the best person in the world who could be doing this? Or could there actually be some new thinking here that we could benefit from?
Sawyer, the machine.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, when Andre Karpathy left in July of 2022, I remember a lot of people saying, especially the media, saying this spells disaster for Tesla's FSD efforts, and look where we are now. And as far as Drew, I would not be surprised if him and JB Straubel are really close. And when JB left in 2019, they've always stayed in touch. And I wouldn't be surprised if Drew just ended up going to Redwood Materials and just helped JB over there. And indirectly, Tesla would benefit from that because Redwood and Tesla do partner on some battery recycling.
Machine.
I like the Omar goes through the 7 stages of grief or whatever, the coping, and now he's in the attack phase. He's all of a sudden Bagliano went from a sympathetic figure to the whole reason That now, apparently now Tesla doesn't have the best drivetrain. I think I've never heard Omar say that before. So I think he's kind of emotional right now. And it's interesting because on one hand, you had Meta say that 4680 has totally been de-risked. Oh, that's the first I heard of that. Wow, do they have everything running smoothly? They have DBE on the anode and cathode and high volume production? I didn't hear that before. Interesting how these assumptions kind of get embedded into people's minds. And, to Adrian's point on Austin, I have people who've moved from California to Texas, and they're like, "Oh God, it was so terrible at first, but then I got used to it, and I realized this is what they all say. Like I realized I just have to put the air conditioning on and stay inside all summer." And I'm like, "And that's a positive?" Like, no, I prefer to be able to go somewhere I can go outside. I go for a nice trail run, take off my shirt on the ridge of Pacifica, enjoy the ocean views, and think to
Machine.
myself,
I know you like to take off your shirt and go for runs and stuff. I think that's why Tesla moved headquarters, because they didn't want employees seeing it like that.
well, that's yeah.
Omar.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
Because of the shirtless image, I agree with you. It's hard for him to keep it straight too. Meta.
Yeah, I think Machine's putting words in both Omar and my mouth. Neither of us is saying that the coordination of when Drew's leaving is just happens to be a coincidence that there's layoffs and he decides to leave at this time. But the fact that it's coordinated and that he's not leaving, like he didn't leave before, he didn't leave after, he's announcing it so that the news story is kind of together. He's not like burning bridges, yelling a bunch of stuff. Like this is how you would exit. How else would Machine like to see Drew leave?
Machine.
I have no problem with how he left. I'm just saying people are trying to rationalize that everything's copacetic, everything's smooth running, and there's no issues. With you saying
I don't think that's what they're saying.
He just said there's no issues with 4680. Everything's been put in place.
Here's the thing. I agree with your sentiments of how you kind of paraphrase what they're saying, but then you throw in certain statements that they did not say and open up yourself for is putting words in our mouths. But I agree, the sentiment changes every now and then, which is why we have you here. But Omar, go ahead.
Yeah, I remembered I was gonna respond to Machine's point. So, I'm not saying I don't like Drew. I love Drew. Obviously, he's contributed immensely to Tesla. I've met him at events. I've talked to him. I saw him at the Cybertruck event. He told me about the range extender and stuff like that. So I like him a lot. But you just look at the reaction today on Twitter. I open X and I start reading the news feed, and people are going, "Oh my God, it's the end of the world. Drew is leaving. Was it a mutiny? He stood up against Elon. Oh my God, like this is the end of the company. There's serious problems." Dan Ives said, "Disaster for the company." And is it good? No, of course, it's not good. Sales are down year over year. They're doing layoffs. That's not what happens when business is good. But in the bigger picture, it's a very small thing. Tesla has a great battery and drivetrain. I'm driving around in a Cybertruck right now with the 4680 structural pack. It's amazing. I'm driving, 3.5 hours on less than 80% of the charge. But is Drew Baglino the god of battery and drivetrain? Who this is like the irreplaceable guy? We can never find anyone in the world who can do this job. No, he's not. There's other people who are working on electric drivetrains and can continue to do that. It's it's bad. It's a little bit over dramatized in the bigger picture of this is a company that is productizing an FSD breakthrough. And a lot of people, I think, are going to miss that because they're just caught up in a panic about something that's kind of just a normal part of doing business if you follow these companies for years.
Okay, we have Kristen on the board as well. Let's get her initial thoughts. Kristen, what do you think about these, layoffs so far?
I think that Elon stated it's part of corporate restructuring and they do it every 5 years. I mean, I was sitting in the crowd when JB Strobel was announced that he'd be stepping down and Drew would be stepping in. And I think people hate change, especially with leaderships that they emotionally and they kind of relate to. I mean, Drew is excellent. We did like him. I mean, so many people that Tesla hires are excellent. As far as it staying the same, I think those guys have been there, Rohan and Drew, for quite a long time. And I mean, longer than most of the industry standards. That says a lot about Tesla, just how excellent it is that people want to stay that long. Now, a phase is going to come when Tesla has a dip. I mean, we're kind of in a horrible macroeconomic right now. Things are going down. I mean, look at people are talking about World War III. I think we have to be realistic and not emotional about this. I know a lot of people like to be told that everything's good, but you know what? It's okay. I think Tesla will be okay. And I think moving forward, Tesla knows what it's doing. It's done well so far. Sure, it's had some hard times, but I think it's leading the EV revolution. And I think we should be excited about maybe who is filling these roles and what Tesla has planned. It's not like there isn't a game plan just because we can't see it.
Thank you, Meta.
Yeah, regarding the layoffs, it is very common. In the past, I've often held the position that regularly scheduled layoffs has a negative effect of incentivizing not hiring the best. It makes it challenging to hire certain folks. Of course, if somebody's a good performer, they're not going to be worried about the bottom 10% being removed all the time. However, you can counterbalance that, and Elon has at times said every new hire must be approved by Elon. That's a way of basically saying if anybody's trying to sneak in low performers, then there will be consequences for those people trying to do that. So it's okay to say every now and then they're going to lay people off for performance reasons. And I think the notion that this is associated with the costs and other things, maybe, but they've also done this on a semi-regular frequency.
Machine.
I like the idea of trimming the fat of your lowest performers once in a while. And in fact, I think we need to do that at the spaces. And I've reviewed the bets, the coffee bets, and I've determined that Yaman has to be kicked off. And
I will post my resignation tonight. Go ahead.
in other news, I thought for a second about uploading a tweet of a photo of me shirtless and then pinning it to this board, but I've stopped myself.
Wow.
Electric article.
You're on. Yeah.
Announced Tesla puts $25,000 electric car codenamed NV9 on back burner, despite what Elon Musk said. Electric can confirm that Tesla indeed put its upcoming $25,000 electric car, sometimes referred to as Model 2, on the back burner, despite what Elon Musk said. The project was codenamed NV9. Tesla has been working on its next generation vehicle platform that is expected to enable much cheaper electric vehicles. The automaker has previously talked about 2 upcoming vehicles on the platform, a model cheaper and smaller than the Model 3, sometimes being referred to as the Model 2, and the Tesla Robotaxi. A few weeks ago, Reuters reported that Tesla has canceled it. As usual, there's more to the story. It is likely that Musk's blanket denial of the report is due to Reuters claiming the vehicle was scrapped. Electric can confirm that the program was postponed, according to sources familiar with the matter. Musk might take issues with claiming that it's canceled, but the project is effectively scratched right now, as Tesla is putting all resources into its self-driving effort. According to sources familiar with the matter, Musk told Tesla's team in Austin in December 2023 that NV9, an expansion of Gigafactory Texas for the new, cheaper model, was a priority for 2024. However, the project was recently completely defunded, and many people involved in it were laid off as part of the round of layoffs announced today. Instead, Musk said that he wanted Tesla to focus on the south expansion of Gigafactory Texas, which is going to house a giant data center for the Robotaxi project. According to people familiar with the project, it is already behind schedule, and there's serious doubt that it can be completed by the end of August, which is the timeline Musk has been pushing for. Shortly after denying the report that the cheaper model was canceled, Musk announced that Tesla would unveil its Robotaxi on August 18th.
Okay. Does that make you more bullish or bearish about the company, Machine?
It makes me it's both, to be honest. It's you can
No, pick a
certainly
side.
take it makes me want to buy more when the price goes down.
So it makes it bullish then.
But not at this price, not this share price.
Okay. Grant.
Yep, I don't want to be too conspiratorial, but I do think that when you take that article in conjunction with Drew leaving, it's definitely possible, especially if you read the actual tweet that he wrote where he said, I can't remember the exact language, but some of the problems that they tackled he didn't love or something like that. I think it's possible that he disagreed with this approach to scrap that model and go all in on robotaxi, and that could be a part of the reason that he's leaving.
Go ahead, Machine.
I was gonna say, I think it's all conjecture, right? We're all guessing. I think it's reasonable to think there's going to be disagreements about this plan. You have all these people focused on their hard work on automotive, making these, high class vehicles, and they're going to say, "Nah, we're just going to go YOLO on robotaxis."
I don't know
may
if
pay
I
off.
agree with the characterization, YOLO, but yeah. Jeff.
Yeah, the two hardware, I mean, it definitely looks like they could be pairing some hardware efforts, but the two that they're gonna, I think, be super focused on are the next generation platform, which I think people are getting confused. It's gonna be modular in nature in terms of design and manufacturing. It's gonna allow them to make some late stage decisions, both in design and manufacturing. Um, and so I think they're focused on that and they're focused on the bot, and they probably don't need as many hardware efforts as they had before. Again, hence this differentiated restructuring that's happening, and that could be at the heart of this, which is we don't need as the size of if utilization rates are really going to increase that dramatically in auto with robotaxi, then maybe we need a little bit of a differentiated investment in terms of our approach to hardware. I don't know. It's hard to say. It doesn't relate to necessarily the volume of vehicles they ship, but maybe the number of models that they think they'll need to be successful. And if they're developing this next generation platform that could spur multiple kind of model types off of that platform, again, if they have to make decisions about where they're investing, Omar talked about buying all this compute, all the AI resources needed, they're probably making those decisions, and that drove this reduction. I don't think it's trimming.
Yeah.
I don't think it's every group gets a 5 or 10% haircut. I think it could be much deeper in some groups and some groups not at all.
Pennington, did you have anything to add? Pennington 10. Did you have anything to add? Okay, Machine.
Well, first of all, I don't know why anyone would have Chad Pennington, of course, a shitty quarterback, as their icon. That's weird. I would just say, do you think that Tesla would make these same decisions if they weren't possibly going to print a negative free cash flow this quarter? You don't think it has anything to do with it?
That's a really good question. I think that they should make the necessary decisions regardless of the bottom line, but it might be more difficult to sell if they were making tens of billions of dollars. What do you think?
It would be more difficult to sell these cuts if they're making more money. Is that what you implied?
Yeah, I think when it's kind of hard to explain, but like, how do you explain that you have to cut off 10% fat when you're making a lot of money? Like for Apple, let's say you're making tens of billions of dollars, as opposed to pushing the company to these new initiatives and taking it to the edge, and that kind of justifying in that sense. I think that makes more sense. Meta.
Yeah, I think if you look at the last time they did a cut, shortly after they announced good earnings, so I don't think you should immediately jump to that conclusion. And the other point is, a lot of people are hypothesizing that this is correlated to the Reuters article. However, Lars and Franz were the folks quoted in the book as convincing Elon not to make the other decision. Drew's job doesn't really change whether they make robo taxis or not. You could argue maybe he didn't want to bet the company again, but I mean, he's being compensated very heavily unless he's leaving to go do something else. And you're saying that he stayed at Tesla 18 years purely for money. I don't think those uh, theories are consistent.
Okay, Sawyer.
If that electric report is true, I mean, why not do the $25,000 vehicle with the steering wheel at the same time as the robotaxi instead of just the robotaxi? Because I feel like there's so many people out there. Yes, like in the cities, it makes sense to have a bunch of robotaxis or even suburban areas. But there's still plenty of people that are going to want to buy cars. And if you don't have a vehicle priced in that price point, I feel like that you're leaving out a lot of potential sales there.
Machine.
First of all, I just want to say it's embarrassing for Sawyer that I broke this electric article and not him. And I think you had to work harder, Sawyer.
Well, I blocked Fred, so I don't see his stuff.
You have to stop hanging out on Spaces all day and get back to studying the Twitter feed. What my question was that if they were truly stopping the building of this Gen 3, Gen 2, whatever model, the next gen vehicle line at Austin, why wouldn't they just make that line for robotaxi? I'm confused. Maybe I misinterpreted that, but it seems odd to me that they would stop the production of a new line altogether.
I think this is people not understanding what unboxed is from a design and manufacturing perspective, and how it allows you to do some late stage postponement in decisions. I believe they're building a new platform line that will be able to, with some smaller modifications, be able to produce multiple vehicle types. You won't have the classic, like, these 3 lines are dedicated to this product, these 2 lines are dedicated to this product. The changeover time is going to be rapid because everything's going to be kind of assembled in a modular fashion at various stages. So I just it's a nuanced thing. It's a difficult thing to kind of capture in a tweet. So I think people just think a car is being canceled or deprioritized. It may be. It could be true. There could be some truth to it. I don't know. But I think people have to focus on. I think what they're building is something that will allow them to do many things more concurrently and do some late stage postponement of decisions. That's what I see them doing.
Machine.
Yeah, speaking of the unbox method, I was watching an old SNL skit, and then I went over to Iman's mom's house and I presented her a box in front of my crotch.
Okay, 1,300 people. You broke your record. Meta.
I think you need to institute a rule that only Patreons can refer to this platform as Twitter, because Machine clearly doesn't understand what platform he's on, and his latency on information seems really high. So you should be
Speaking
careful
of,
about what
Meta
he has to
reminds
say.
me, this space is sponsored by that patrons. The link is at the top of their screens if you'd like to support the space. Meta, thank
On
you.
a more
Meta, go ahead.
on a more material topic, when folks are talking about the robotaxi versus unboxed, a critical engineering trade-off that may have come up is something along the lines of, should we do a single piece casting for the robotaxi, which may not be as amenable to something like unbox, which I know folks like JB and others maybe push for, and obviously Drew's pretty close to him, versus unbox, which allows you to do a large variety of vehicles on the same line. These two things may at some point have become a trade-off and competing priorities, and a direction needs to be chosen at some point. So I wouldn't be surprised if we learn soon that they're putting the unbox process on pause, not the ether loop, not the 48 volt, but the unbox process for a high variety of vehicles may not be as critical as single stamped, low wire vehicle production.
That's a hell of a call. That's
Yeah,
a
I'm just
big
saying
call, Meta.
there are engineering trade-offs. There are engineering trade-offs
Wait,
to be
can
decided.
you? So, but the thing is, like, you kind of hedged it, saying, "I wouldn't be surprised," as opposed to making a call. Are you willing to take a coffee bet on that?
No, I'm not going to make a coffee bet on it because, like you said, there's a non-zero probability. I'm not saying it's the likely outcome.
Gotcha. Well, I'm curious what Jeff has to say on that.
I mean, well, first off, anything's possible, but I mean, he kind of recommitted. I mean, he confirmed his commitment to unbox and like talking about the capital model, the amount of manufacturing design. I think just on the earnings call, like less than 90 days ago, um, Elon himself talked about how they're going to revolutionize how cars are made and the approach to assembly, and that there's all new robotics, all new capex being designed for the factory. So, I mean, maybe it's for something else, but I thought that was all referring to unbox. But I mean, anything's possible. I think they're committed to this, but we'll see.
Machine.
I was just gonna say, I think Meta will only take a bet if it's so egregiously wrong, like his L4 door to door by what is it, tomorrow? What do you got? Like 2 weeks left?
Meta.
Apparently, Machine doesn't know when May ends. That's okay. Um, while you say it's an egregious statement, and there is evidence that they were talking about revolutionizing the way cars are made. Those are not contrarian to each other, right? There is efficiencies to be gained in making a single vehicle versus making a line that can make many different vehicles. Now, there is an advantage to making, say, the line so you can make two passenger vehicles, and you can make vans, you can make all the other things. But if the AI is progressing at a faster pace and the hardware timeline on a Gantt chart's looking like it's going to take a lot longer to get there, there can be difficult trade-off choices to be made. I'm not saying that's the likely reason. I'm just saying that these are in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, that's logical. So we'll have to see if they changed direction on that. That would be very interesting.
It would be the kind of thing that would lead to a lot of headcount changes, right?
I don't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, so scrapping hardware projects definitely would. But if you're, I don't know. I just wouldn't know between unbox and non-unbox. What would it mean? I mean, from a line perspective, they're definitely going for a model of less and less human involvement in the line, regardless of unbox versus not. Um, so yeah, I have to give this some more thought. It's interesting. Could they be going all in on a different approach? It, it, we shouldn't close anything out here.
Gordon, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
What do you think of today's news?
I'm sorry, I just joined the room. I assume you're talking about the layoffs.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean it's in line kind of with what and where we think the company's headed. I think the senior executive departures, as well as the departures from the the quote unquote AI team, kind of suggests that maybe things aren't moving along as quickly as expected. And another read could be that some of these executives feel like there's other underlying risks that maybe they don't want to be associated with, and/or they want to sell their stock. So that would be our quick take.
Thank you. Grant?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think, appreciate all the thinking around what may or may not be going on, and I'm just optimistic that we'll get some level of visibility into it in the next week or two, based on the fact that a lot of people just got let go, and they may be speaking to different types of journalists. I think hopefully there are enough people out there willing to talk that there's some level of clarity provided on all of these fronts. I expect that to be the case, and we just encourage people to not reflexively think that Reuters is lying and like mainstream media is out to get people. Like, these are reputable people who do have sources. I think it'll just be interesting to see what the drip of information over the next 10 days looks like.
Kristen?
Yes, but I think industry standard, like it's happening across the board. And I think people will be disgruntled and happy. And absolutely, there's people that are willing to jump on, and especially media to make it sound bad. We know they do this. So, I mean, people are going to come forward with their reasons. But I mean, if across the board different industries and tech are doing this, I mean, it obviously is something that's happening besides just Tesla.
Yeah. A bunch of other companies laid people off too. Tesla has done this before, 5 to 10% of the workforce every other year or so, and it's worked out well for them in the past. Machine.
I don't think I was here last time at the moment that Gordon said that Tesla did not have AI competency, and so it's the first time I heard it, and it kind of floored me as someone who works in machine learning and knows the various techniques and things that Tesla's doing. It's very clear that they utilize advanced machine learning. So I'm just curious, Gordon, who are your sources who are so incorrect in stating that Tesla is not an AI company?
I don't reveal my sources.
Okay, just so you know, as a Ivy League educated PhD in machine learning,
Cornell.
robotics, Cornell, well, it's semi Ivy League. Your sources suck.
Would you please treat my bears with respect?
Well, I'm like part bear, part bull, so it's okay for me to do it. I didn't make fun of his mom or anything.
All right, we have some new speakers coming up. Henning.
Yeah, I think that for the next earnings call, to counter any potential re-rating of a PE, I think I would appreciate if they start getting more into their, let's say, financial model for the upcoming robotaxi network. At least give some hints, because I think that it will be quite disastrous, to be honest. And if we want to be seen as an AI company, which we clearly are with FSD, I mean, there's no way around it, right? We don't even want to discuss it. It's clear as hell. But I think what the last earnings calls lacked by far is a way forward to give Wall Street a financial model to price that in, because it's not there. And I have a strong doubt at this moment that Elon is going to guide. And if he's not guiding, then we have no transparency. And for sure, for the next quarters, EPS will be hit tremendously. And I think this is something that we as shareholders deserve.
Gordon, the machine.
Sorry about that. Can you give me a second? And then I'll
Yeah,
come back.
machine.
Thanks.
So I agree with the previous speaker. I think Elon's looked at the finances this quarter and the next few quarters and realized that their earnings are going to suck, their cash flow is going to suck, and interest rates are staying high for longer. And there's no real clear viewpoint for saying that margin is going to come back quickly. And the stock is rated, at a PE ratio above 60 still. When you discount the accounting benefit, and at some point it might get re-rated downward, and you don't know when that's going to happen. And I think this pivot to FSD, it's timed with obviously V12 and a lot of success coming from that. And I think now he's pivoting as that, seeing that that's the next major potential wave of profit growth, that the automotive margins are limited right now. There's no sight right now in the next few months, years, that those are going to come back without FSD. So I think he's pivoted, and it's a question whether or not it'll pay off or not.
Okay. Doge Army, Grant, then Gordon.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Machine said earlier to Gordon. Gordon, are you familiar with who Pete Bannon is and what he's doing at Tesla? Thank you.
Grant.
Yeah, I wanted to just echo what Henning was saying. I think that I am 100% aligned with the idea that for Tesla's stock price to not plummet, they really do need to be painting a picture of what the FSD operations look like today, both in terms of number of subscribers, retention rates, maybe splitting that revenue out. I think that if they assume they're just going to be able to talk about how, a lot of people are using it now and we think it's great, it's really not going to resonate well with a lot of investors. And I just think that the time has really come to start opening that up and making it clear exactly what the AI components of this business are and how they're performing. Failing to do so will be bad for the stock price, full stop.
Gordon.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I have a question for those in the room. So I'm looking at Tesla FSD tracker right now, and it's saying that version 12.3.4 has a safety critical intervention in the city every 55 miles, and on the highway has a disengagement, safety critical disengagement every 55 miles, and on the highway every 160 miles. Now, there's 162 companies that report disengagement data to the California DMV. Based on the most recent data, Zoox is at one disengagement every 177,602 miles. WeRide is at one every 21,191 miles. Waymo is at one every 17,311. Pony AI 17,077. So the point is, based on TeslaFSDTracker.com, and the reason why we use Tesla FSD Tracker is because Tesla doesn't report this information to the California DMV because they're still level 2 ADAS. If they were level 3, they'd have to take legal liability. They haven't done that. But using Tesla FSD Tracker, this company is like 1,000 times worse, just looking at disengagements based on California DMV data and FSDTracker.com data, than the competition. So when you guys say they're going to have to show where they're at in autonomy, based on the data we have, they're so far behind, it's not even close. So I just don't understand, why people are so optimistic there. Thank you.
Okay, Machine.
People are optimistic because the way Tesla has structured and architected their software, it's based to function on a broad range of capabilities, working across the United States on every road automatically means that it's harder to curve fit and overfit your solution to a specific geographic area. And so your performance is going to be worse to begin with. And what's going to happen right now is as they scale their compute, then the accuracy of the models is going to go up. That's kind of a no-brainer, known with how transformers work with scaling up compute and number of parameters and amount of data. It's a well-known relationship. So their critical interventions per mile will go down. The question is, though, how much will they go down and how much compute will they need? So I think it is reasonable to try to project out what that disengagement rate will get to when you're forced to perform well over such a wide variety of areas and obstacles. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, in short, they're not even playing the same game, Gordon. It's hard to compare the stats when they're not playing the same game. Tesla is not playing the game Waymo is playing or others are playing with heavy hardware, bunch of LiDARs and radars. That's unlikely to be profitable and scalable in the future. Tesla is directly going to the profitable, potentially profitable, and likely scalable solution. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the problem with all of that is, this account machine, you said a lot of things, a lot of verbiage. Here's the problem, though. Regulators are going to look at what's currently available, right? So the regulators in California and elsewhere are going to look at the disengagements of the current technology. I don't think they're going to give Tesla a pass and simply say, Tesla's doing something different, so we'll let them be, So just so you know, based on 2023 data, what was it? Waymo had one safety critical incident every 2.4 million miles. So taking the data thus far from TeslaFSDTracker.com, Tesla's 43,636 times worse than Waymo. So I hear what you guys are saying. Tesla's better and all this, but we're talking about the U.S. government, right? They're just going to rate them based on the guys that currently exist, and based on the guys that currently exist, they're thousands of times worse. So I don't understand, again, where all this optimism is coming from from the Tesla bulls. Thank you.
Okay, machine.
You have to make it apples to apples comparison. And Tesla, they're allowing these people to take the software on all sorts of roads and crazy speeds, which Waymo wouldn't do. Is Waymo going at 55 miles an hour while someone's filming a Pornhub clip in their vehicle? No, they're not doing that. So Tesla's going to have to report, offering just in San Francisco at 25 miles an hour or less. What is our performance then? I agree with you that they're going to have to kind of report some controlled space and situations that compare to other FSD, robotaxi competitors to give it apples to apples comparison. And I also think there is concern about how quickly is the system going to ramp up and become accurate enough to perform like a robotaxi. That is a legitimate concern, especially if the company is going to be valued solely or mostly on FSD. So I do think we don't know how long that's going to take. But I kind of agree with you.
Adrian, welcome back. Would you like to add anything to that conversation?
No, not at the moment. Still listening, gathering some bearings, but thank you though.
Okay. Henning.
Yeah, so maybe just another theme which I wanted to talk about, and that is the decision to scrap the 25K car. If that turns out to be true, I think that the timelines will be far stretched for any EPS for robotaxi, because the adoption will be, in comparison to the 25K car, far more longer, I think, and that's what I am afraid of. And to be honest, it's sounding and it's feeling a little bit like the same decision to cut prices, to essentially gain market share, which I understand. But still, the EPS hit last year was so significant. It's one of the maybe miscalculations that I see. I see a lot of good things happening with Tesla, which I think is good as an all-in investor. But the decision back at that time to really forfeit any kind of EPS for cutting the price, I think that was a miscalculation in hindsight, because I bought a Tesla Model Y in Germany, and I did that when they had zero APR financing. And I just couldn't understand at that time why they decided to cut price so massively instead of buying down the loans. Maybe some opinions on that here, but
yeah, we talked about that a bunch of times before. So just kind of circle back on that real quick. Why doesn't Tesla buy down rates? A lot of other companies do, like Ford, GM, Toyota, literally all other legacy automakers have their finance arms. And they raise tens of billions of dollars, and they offer their products to customers at lower rates, subsidized rates, basically doing financial engineering. And that does boost their sales because it lowers the monthly payment, makes them a bit more affordable than usually otherwise. But the problem with that strategy is in the longer term, it adds tens of billions of dollars to the balance sheet, backed by depreciating assets. And the faster these companies innovate, the faster their older products depreciate. Therefore, it introduces an incentive to not innovate as fast. I don't think Tesla wants to be in that position. Elon answered this question about 10 years ago on an earnings call. He was asked by an analyst. The analyst said, now that your Model S and is proving some good demand, some good margins, why don't you lower the monthly payments with lower financing rates or some leasing? And he said, that's how legacy automakers got into trouble. We don't want to do that. And Tesla has been true to that for all these years. Why start now? Especially with robotaxis potentially around the corner. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, I understand. I just want to say they did that in Germany. So
in
I
small
understand.
markets, like there's local specific situations that may make it maybe slight. But if you look at the last production and deliveries reports, only 1% to 2% of Tesla's deliveries were leased, as opposed to BMW, Mercedes, we're talking 50, 60, 70, 80% of the lease are leased. Those are completely different stories. Gordon?
Yeah, I guess, again, when you say we're close to robo-taxis, it sounds like you didn't hear the statistics I just gave you. Again, Tesla is, nearly 1,000 times worse when you look at disengagements versus those reported. So disengagements reported by Tesla FSDtracker.com versus those reported to the California DMV. Tesla is still level 2, meaning they don't report any disengagements, any information, whereas pretty much everyone else in California, the 162 companies that do report data to the California.
Okay. Sorry, your connection got cut off. Can you guys hear Gordon? All right, I think we got the gist of it. Adrian, and then about Tesla.
Yeah, so I mean, if we are going to hang on to a statistic, we can always use statistics in order to get a point across. It doesn't mean it actually reflects reality in terms of utility. Now, I myself, I have been in an FSD-driven vehicle, and I can tell you this thing is absolutely fucking amazing. Now, if you get a measure by disengagement, sure, you can do this, but you also have to make sure that you take into account the fact that FSD is actually exposed to higher risk, high complexity environments. You have how many millions of cars out there with the software on them that are each driving through very complicated situations and are actually handling them quite well. Now, the fact that there are going to be disengagements within these scenarios, these high chaos scenarios, is just a side effect. It's going to happen by default. Something like, say, Waymo or Cruise, they drive around in San Francisco. It's a very low-risk environment, except from, of course, an occasional crackhead that jumps in front of the car, but that's a very, that's not a very common scenario. But yeah, sure, a measure by disengagements and not by actual utility, unless you've actually been inside of the car and seen how it performs, especially in high-risk, high-complexity environments. I don't think the take of saying disengagements is at all accurate, or even in this case, applicable as a metric to something like FSD, or even to say that there is a limit to the projection of, hey, we're going to have robotaxi at some point. Sure, there's still ways to go, but it's actually not that much of a way to go.
About Tesla?
Yeah, disengagements can mean different things. In 2022, Cruise was the leader as far as the disengagement. So it's they reported the highest mileage per disengagement among even compared to Waymo. I think that was on the news. But how do they measure this? That probably was based on the test drivers that would participate in everything. And then now in 2024, it has been revealed and is posted in New York Times, for example, that they actually had 1.5 remote operators per car. And on average, they would intervene every 2.5 to 5 miles. So this is the statistic. So we can look at the numbers that they reported based on the test drivers, or we can look at the actual performance with actual autonomous driving. 2.5 to 5 miles, the average intervention by remote operators.
Gordon?
Yeah, that's just factually incorrect. I'm looking at the California DMV data right now. And, the top 5 guys, I just gave you guys the numbers. Zoox is at 1 disengagement every 177.6 thousand miles. And the rest of the guys are anywhere between 1 disengagement between 17,000 and 21,000 miles. And again, so whatever, I don't know what that former guy was talking about, but those numbers just aren't factually correct. And the other thing I just want to stress.
All right, hold on. Gordon, just one sec. About Tesla, can you clarify what you meant versus what Gordon is saying?
I'm just referencing the New York Times article, and I believe that was based on the filing that they made. I'm not sure the exact source, but you can check with New York Times.
Okay, Adrian, and then we'll get back to Gordon. Gordon, one second.
Yeah, so Gordon, a quick question. Is this, what kind of environment have these cars driven in? Because you can say that there's low rate of disengagement, but then again, you have some very interesting incidents. Like, say, for instance, if we're going to take Cruise and Waymo as an example, these cars were involved in the killing of a pedestrian. I believe that person is actually dead. Well, I mean, given, of course, this person was launched in the direction of the vehicle after it was hit by a manually operated vehicle. Again, another case for why we need FSD and such like this, because it would never do that. But then the car itself drove over the person, which is kind of weird. I guess it needs more LiDAR. For what is the complexity? Do you actually know what kind of environment these cars are in and how we can actually make the statistical graph more accurate? Because we're dealing with two very different environments. Being on a public road, on a highway with a lot of unpredictable factors, of course, occurring every now and then because humans and chaos. Inside of a city or a controlled environment, you will not get these same scenarios in the same frequency. So have you considered this as well? Is this something that you're also considering with these statistics, that they're actually operating in low-risk environments, low-complexity environments?
Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, this guy who sounds like Elon Musk, respectfully, asks questions that don't really have answers. So, what we know is we know the data. The data is available. Number one, and when I say the data is available, if you're level 3, you have to report every disengagement with specific details around safety critical or not, etc. Every single one of those disengagements, Zoox, WeRide, Waymo, Pony AI, and the other 160 roughly guys who are level 3 report that to the California DMV. Tesla does not report any of that because they're level 2. They haven't taken legal liability. Number one. Number two, people talk about, these corner cases. And when you see the videos, you look at these videos of Tesla's cars riding around, running stop signs, going into other lanes, etc. Those aren't corner cases. A corner case would be if you were driving down the street and an animal fell out of the sky onto your car or a tree dropped in the road. These aren't corner cases where Tesla's cars in these videos are making mistakes. These are normal driving experiences. So, and with respect to, where these cars are tested, I mean, I've seen the videos as well as you guys have. I mean, they're driving on city streets, they're driving on highways, they're picking people up. They're effectively robo-taxis. So they're tested in all environments. So when this gentleman who sounds like Elon Musk, respectfully, ask these questions, it's these gotcha questions and these vagaries and platitudes that really aren't answerable. So with all due respect, I don't understand or know what you're asking beyond a gotcha, and that's
Okay.
not really applicable.
It's not meant to be a gotcha. It's meant to actually highlight the fact that the statistics are not sufficient to actually prove the point that you're trying to make, which is to say that the software itself is not suited for the roads, or like is of a certain level. Of course, it's of a certain level, but what I'm saying here is that these statistics make a very broad claim that is not entirely applicable or even remotely accurate. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
Okay.
Also, just call me
Kathy?
Adrian.
Yep. Kathy, then Kristen, then Doljami. Kathy, you may unmute yourself.
Hi. Sorry, wasn't paying attention. What's missing from this discussion, and it's very interesting, is ego and human nature. First of all, back to the leaving of Drew Baglino. Sure, I'm sad he's going, but ever since Tom Zhu was brought in from China, I've been
Kathy, sorry, I got to interrupt. We're focused on FSD robotaxis right now.
Oh, I know, and that I have an FSD point as well. It's all tied together.
Okay, can you get to that real quick?
FSD. All right. So again, the people driving Teslas and FSD, I'm one of them, have been for a few years now, and if they are measuring how many times we're taking FSD off, and they think somehow that's unsafe, 95% of the time it's not unsafe. It's just that I prefer to do something else than what the car is doing. So I just, I know Tesla's not reporting numbers, but it just,
in short, that kind of goes towards Adrian's point that these statistics are not necessarily apples to apple comparison.
Exactly.
Kristen?
Yes, I know that Gordon states you can't reveal your AI expert resources, but I'd like you to post this research that you have. Could you post it above so we could all look at it? And as well, like if we're going off statistic, Gordon, I mean, I'm looking you up and your group that you are a research investment firm that I mean, the statistics online are showing that your firm doesn't really do really well. So I'm just, I mean, going off statistics, I would like to see this research on what you have for FSD.
Machine.
Yeah, I would just say with respect to some of these other automotive players, robotaxi players like Waymo, um, if they're truly at a um, disengagement rate of once every 2 million miles or more, then there's no reason why they wouldn't be able to deploy this in every city around the US right now. And the fact is, outside of operating expenses, they also,
It's one every 2.4. This isn't
right.
debatable. This is California DMV data. It's one disengagement every 2.4 million miles for safety.
Well, the
critical.
question,
Right.
Gordon, for you is that why aren't they scaling across other cities if it's that good?
They are scaling. It's just the business isn't profitable. That's the problem.
Right.
Even with the so Waymo in 2023 had one disengagement every 17.311 thousand miles. They had one safety critical disengagement
Right.
every 2.4
No,
million.
no one is debating you on that data. It's just the point
Well,
is,
it sounds like you guys are.
first of all, no,
No.
we're not. Nobody's
No.
debating you on
You
that
said
point.
robotaxis are near, but Tesla's like
No. I said
46,000 times worse on a safety critical basis than Waymo, based on Tesla FSDtracker.com.
okay.
We're saying that there are holes in your statistic. We're not saying
Right.
that your statistics
You
are
can
wrong. We're
say
just saying
whatever
that
you
there is
want.
critical data
Respectfully,
that's
you can say
missing, and
whatever
it
you
is.
want, but you can't just blindly say there's
Also,
holes
have
in
you
my
considered
statistics. These aren't my
that
statistics,
there are
by the
holes?
way. There's statistics of the
Okay, cool. Then I would
California.
like to know who your guys are, because there are a lot of inaccuracies there. Also, another thing you have to consider with measuring disengagement rates of Tesla FSD is you have different modes that FSD operates under. You can have chill mode, which is the most stable of the two. You have the normal mode, which is like just medium performance, kind of assertive. And then you have assertive, which drives like a person who's had a couple cups of coffee. It does miss a few exits. It's not the best. So you drive in chill mode if you want next level accuracy, or if you want it to be a little bit more risky, then you just go for the medium route. Chill mode just basically it's like a LiDAR car. It's just very slow, doesn't do much risky stuff, but is also pretty accurate. But so you're making a generalization here that you're not actually taking these couple modes apart and measuring the data for each and every single one of those modes, because you'll have a higher disengagement rate on the riskier mode than you would on something like chill mode. So that's another little thing that you need to consider here. Statistics are a very dangerous thing if you don't have certain points. But yeah, I'll make my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Doge Army, that machine.
Yeah, I mean, on a Tesla FSD, drivers have driven it over 1 billion miles, and they can disengage whenever they want. And you said it yourself, Gordon, that Tesla doesn't report number of disengagements. So I'm not sure where your FSD disengagement website gets that data. It's probably from your AI experts or short sellers that just put some information on a website and you believe it is fact and try to perpetrate it as if it is fact, when you have the California DMV data. That's great, but again, you're comparing apples to oranges, or apples to like airplanes or something. My other point is that you say Tesla's not an AI company. What about all the AI experts that are working at Tesla, like Pete Bannon, Ashok? What do you have to say about those people? You don't believe Elon, and you think Elon is a fraud and a liar, but what about all these AI guys that work for him? How do you respond to that, Gordon?
Great points. Machine.
Yeah, just back to my issue with Waymo. If they were truly at the disengagement rate you're saying, and that was actually something that they've solved for everywhere in the US, every road, then I don't care what their operating costs are. They would be showing this competency in many different cities, even if it was just one vehicle, because they could announce to the top of the mountain to the world that they've solved robotaxis, and their valuation of Google would 2x overnight. And they could raise however much capital they needed for this adventure. And the fact is, they haven't, because they haven't actually solved it to work everywhere. That's just not how AI works. You can't train it on the suburbs of Phoenix and then it's going to work everywhere. I'm explaining to you how data science works. It doesn't work that way. It's called overfitting. And so while for them it does work in San Francisco and Phoenix pretty well, it doesn't mean they've solved it for everywhere. So if you're actually going to evaluate their technology as if it was operating in every city in the United States, then their disengagement rate also would get much lower. Now, it wouldn't be as low as Tesla's, but I'm just saying it's not apples to apples.
Gordon, then Henning.
Yeah, I don't know where to start. Again, it's like you guys are saying the data's wrong, as if somehow I have some correlation or linkage to TeslaFSDtracker.com. I found the website, a few weeks ago. You're questioning the data when it goes against your thesis, but when it's in your favor, you're with it. Look, I'm just citing data. One other thing I'd note is, it's like you guys say this guy who sounds like Elon Musk says that, you can't trust the data. I mean, why can't you trust the data? What have you done to substantiate whether the data is accurate or not? And one other thing I'd note is, again, keep in mind, Tesla does not report any information to the California DMV around their autonomous technology.
So where's
Waymo
this
does,
information coming from,
and
Gordon?
the other operators do. So,
Okay.
we don't know. I think that says a lot there. And the
Okay,
reason
Gordon,
I'm
you're
saying
just repeating. You're
is
just
if you're
repeating
level
your
3, you have to
points.
take legal
Gordon.
liability for your technology. So I think
Can I make a
that's my
point?
opinion. I think that's the reason why Tesla's
No.
not reporting any data.
Henning next, and then Adrian.
I think that, at least for me, it's not an apples to apples comparison. But anyway, we'll see. But I think the point, for transparency reasons, I would still appreciate to introduce by Tesla any measure that can objectively, measure the progress of FSD. Maybe DMV data, okay, fine, but anything that can help us, let's say, measure the progress of FSD. I mean, there are a lot of videos, there's a lot of good content and videos for the
Henning,
progress.
let me ask you: like, do you think FSD is not progressing?
I think FSD is making the impossible possible. That's what I'm thinking. And
Okay, great.
and
I think
but-
we have thousands of videos at this point, right? Like, what do you mean by we don't have enough information to determine that FSD is progressing or not?
I think that we don't have number of disengagements, so at least not as a quantifiable number.
But that's not the end of be all, right?
That's
it has
not
to
what?
be. That's
It
not the end all be
100%
all.
is the end all be all.
No, it's not. It's not. Gordon, safety is not the only determinant of a scalable, profitable service that people will adopt. Like I rode in cruise vehicles in Austin about a dozen times, and about Tesla just posted an article that showed the New York Times article that was referencing between 2.5 to 3 disengagements if you count the human remote interventions, and that was the case with my rides as well. Every single ride I had were multiple times intervened by a human remote operator. That may not show up on your critical disengagement report that's submitted to California. And this service was approved in multiple cities and it ended up running over somebody. So is that the service that you want to get behind? Adrian.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, by the way. Didn't even consider this. Again, it's like another reason for why the data is, okay. So the thing is this, the data itself is entirely accurate. Now, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record here. The problem is you're just not considering additional context that is extremely critical. You can make a lot of claims using statistics, but you can also use this in a malicious sense, and it has been done this way for as long as statistics itself has been a thing. So you can sway public sentiment with this and say we're going to use the disengagement rate as some sort of argument, but then at the same time, you're not considering the actual context itself in which these disengagements, for instance, happen, right? This is important for you to realize. And I'm not questioning the validity of your data. I'm just questioning the validity of your statement, because when you're making such a statement, there's context there that needs to be considered that you're obviously not considering, or else you wouldn't have made this exact statement that you're making.
Henning.
Yeah, and I don't even know why this is even a comparison. I mean, Waymo, for example, is geo-fenced, and FSD is is completely autonomous. So I'm not even understanding why we're having this conversation in the first place. And I think that it's important. I didn't mean the objective number for comparison with other services. I just want to have a number that is measuring progress of FSD. Maybe it's not disengagement, maybe it's something else, but we all see the progress of FSD and it's going in the extremely good direction. But I just would appreciate kind of an official Tesla indicator of progress. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. All right, Grant.
I just joined, so wasn't sure what was being discussed, but I would agree that I think I said it earlier on this space. There just needs to be more data supporting progress in general. That's what Tesla needs to do to get the credit that they deserve for AI, FSD, all the above.
I mean, do you guys doubt that Tesla is sharing more data with NHTSA than is publicly available at this point? Like, why do you have to see the data? Are you the regulator?
No, I mean, I just think that if they want, I don't know how many dollars they're collecting every month or every quarter for AI technology. I mean, if you want to be an AI business, that's a question investors are going to want to understand.
I think investors have plenty of data, and right now, yeah, it's kind of amazing to me that when people argue that investors don't have data on Tesla, like I think investors in Tesla and market participants in general have probably several orders of magnitude more data on Tesla than any other company, including FSD and other AI initiatives. And I mean, literally, what they're required to disclose is in the SEC filings too. So, and on top of that, we have millions of times more data. Gordon?
Yeah, when you guys say there's tons of data available, I mean, this is a company. I think in 2014 is when Elon Musk first started talking about fully autonomous or close to it next year. I mean, you guys talk about Tesla having billions of miles of data, yet there's still level 2 ADAS. So I just don't understand the optimism when this is a company who refuses to report disengagement data to the California DMV when others are doing that. And again, when they do decide to do that, that would be level 3, which means the company has to take legal liability for issues. I think that may be why this will forever be, in our opinion, level 2. Keep in mind, the guys who are leading, the guys who I noted who are leaving, all have LiDAR and radar. Tesla does not.
Okay. Meta. Meta. I think Meta's having some issues. Doge Army. Doge Army.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, Gordon, how do you comment on some of the Chinese automakers and some of the Chinese companies that are switching to vision-only platforms? What are your thoughts on that?
It will be a significant failure. Lives will be lost, likely.
Thank you.
Grant.
I am not familiar with all of the Chinese automakers, but I do think BYD announced a couple months ago that they were.
Grant, your connection is off, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I was saying that I don't know. I am not intimately familiar with all of the different Chinese automakers out there, but I do think BYD announced a couple months ago that they're going to have a $10 billion plus investment in 10 or more new vehicles that are all going to be equipped with LiDAR. So I do think it's going both ways.
Kristen.
GM also announced that they were going to have like 10 plus extra models in EVs, and they didn't even deliver that. And I also think that
Yeah,
it needs to be
you
pointed
know,
out that
it's always funny. Sorry to cut you off, but it's
no
always
worries.
funny. GM had a quarter where they had more press releases about EVs than the EVs they were producing, but not the number of models, but the actual number of units, which is always really interesting to me about GM. Anyway, Kristen, please go.
Yeah, and I was going to point out Tesla did have LiDAR. Tesla has assessed that it does not need LiDAR, so it shouldn't be pointed out that it's as if Tesla never had LiDAR. Tesla can't use LiDAR. Tesla did, and they decided to go with vision only. And that says something. And they do have a huge AI department that once again hires the best in the industry. It hires these people coming out of these Ivy League schools who are into AI training. So there's something to be said about that.
Gordon, are your secret sources, do they have PhDs?
That's a ridiculous question.
Go, Jeremy.
I think Mark Spiegel has a PhD in something, but it's not AI.
Meta.
I'm curious if Gordon would be willing to ask specific questions we ask of you to your sources that are your AI experts and just see what they respond with. I could give you like 2 questions.
Go ahead. What are the questions, man?
My first question would be if they have any experience with transformers, and they could elaborate on what that is for you. And then the second question would be if they have any experience with hardware side of AI, or if they only have experience on the software side of AI.
Okay. Adrian.
Yeah, kind of. I think to the previous point that Gordon was making, if say other companies were to switch division, that lives would be lost. I think I would even ironically agree with you on that one, because the thing is, this requires a lot of data that these companies do not yet have, and they're coming fresh out of something like considering LiDAR, so the progress will be remarkably slow. I think long term, what needs to happen is they need to actually construct their hardware itself in such a way that is compatible with Tesla software at some point, because I think that will be the best. I think we will see a moment in time, or at least in the future, where the subscription service for FSD would actually extend out to other, say, automakers. Because the thing is this: if you're an AI and robotics company, you could actually sell a product just as is, perhaps even part of the hardware as well, because you will get into this in the future. But I think you have to actually optimize the vehicle itself, the hardware, to take the software in the sense, because it will be the best version of it. And if you're going to try and make your own thing, there's actually no guarantee that this will be successful. As a matter of fact, I think it will just be a fundamental waste of time, because you'll be doing whatever else Tesla has already been doing for years, minus all the talent. Like, I mean, hey, maybe you have next level talent with you, say in China somewhere. Like, I'm not underestimating China. I'm just not seeing it in this case. If there is, all the better, all the power to you, man. I really hope that it's successful and that you actually create a competitive product that's really high quality. But at this point, I'm just not really seeing it.
Adrian, have you seen any automakers kind of going vision only and getting ready to license FSD from Tesla?
Sorry, come again?
Have you seen any automakers taking steps towards kind of rearrange their hardware so that they can license FSD from Tesla?
My research is kind of very limited in that regard, so I wouldn't be able to give a objectively accurate answer. For me personally, my perspective, I haven't seen that yet, but I could definitely be wrong given the lack of data.
Okay, thank you. Henning and then Doja.
I think on the positive side, I think what we have yet to experience is dropping auto rates, let's say, rates in general to drop. And I think given that the new pricing, $99 in the US for FSD, I mean, how could you not buy a Tesla? I mean, given comparing the technologies and given the pricing for FSD, I really look forward to see the real net impact of that pricing decision, because it must be a complete game changer, in my view, given,
Okay.
let's say, a year out.
Okay. Doge Army, and then I'm going to take Gordon's views on Q1 financials, Q1 results, and maybe thoughts on the $99 price change for FSD subscription.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to circle back on that FSD tracker data. Gordon, you said that Tesla does not report it. So where is that data coming from, and how do you know that data is accurate? That's my main question I'd like you to answer for us. You said you found it on some website. How do you know those numbers are accurate if Tesla doesn't report their data? Thank you.
You can go to the website and get their methodology.
Gordon, what are your thoughts on this price change for FSD subscription from $199 to $99? What do you think is going to be the impact on take rates, Tesla's bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, and this is our opinion. We feel like it's a form of desperation, because the take rates have collapsed, because the demand has clearly collapsed. The weakness we saw in China and Europe, but the real weakness was in the U.S. But I want to take a step back and talk about something. For commercial robo-taxis to be viable, safety-related takeovers need to be an unlikely and a lifetime event, not once every few days or a week or a month or even a year, not even in a decade. So this idea that you drove around a few days and you had a disengagement with Tesla's tech, I mean, that just shows you that it's just so far behind. And it sounds like people in this room don't understand that dynamic.
No, I think we're on the same page with you on that one. We do, most people in this space agree with you that safety critical disengagements must be a lifetime event, as you put it. Okay.
Right, but based on
but on the way there, right? The frequency of disengagements interventions are definitely going down, as we see in numerous videos.
That's what surprises me in these rooms. You guys use these words like definitely. There's no evidence that Tesla software safety is actually improving. They only release data about accidents, and they only release them in aggregate, limiting the ability to research and study them. Accidents are a doomed failure state.
Yeah, Tesla hasn't announced official data, but the site that you sorted, for example, TeslaFSDTracker.com, the percentage of trips without a disengagement has gone up, right? The percentage of trips with one disengagement has gone up as well. So things are moving in the right direction.
No, that's actually dead wrong. So 12.3,
that's not true.
12.3.4 has gotten, so far it's worse than what 12.3.3
If you compare from dot update to dot update, yes, but if you look at the trend over the last year, things are moving in the right direction, right? I mean, that is according to the source that you cited, as FSDTracker.com.
I don't know if that's
up here if you want. I'll post up here. We can always check our facts. If there is one of the good things about these long form spaces, as opposed to kind of 20, 30-second sound bites on mainstream media, is that we can take a moment to check the facts.
Speaking of facts, for TeslaFSDTracker.com, it looks like the data for FSD is self-reported. You have to register for the website and then upload your data to the website. I'm not sure that has much scientific validity there, Gordon. You should know better. I had 2 disengagements today. I should probably put it on the website.
Yeah, I do encourage people to contribute to the website. And Dojama, we've discussed many times in here that these are not scientific studies. They're not controlled experiments. But I do want to recognize Elias, who's the creator of this website, is doing absolute best what he can do with the limited data that he has. Okay. And this tracker has improved drastically over the last year or two. And we've been tracking the progress of the tracker in this space over the years. So Gordon, at the top, I pinned the main dashboard that they have. And you can see at the top percentage of drives with no critical disengagement, kind of day and night from 1 year ago. You can see percentage of drivers with one or no disengagement trending in the right direction. Now you can point to, in the last graphic at the bottom, you can point to the fact that city distance to critical disengagement has dropped from 12.3 to 12.3.3. But if you look at a longer term trend, things have improved quite a bit as well. And from each update to each update, there's going to be some changes, right? They went from V11 to V12. There's a massive architectural difference. So it's always a two-step forward, one-step back progress. But our resident expert on these things is Meta. Maybe he can say a few things, and then we're going to go to Adrian, then Grant.
Yeah, as is clear, like I've acknowledged and spoken to the fact that it is qualitative reports coming in. But as you're referring to experts and saying you have evidence that it is not getting better, I would also challenge that without data, you can't make a affirmative or affirmative statement in either direction. So if you're willing to share how you get to the affirmative data in one direction, then we can speak about it. But without that, it's hard for us to just take you at your word.
Yeah, that was never
Adrian?
the basis of my argument, that it's not getting better. The basis of my argument is the number of disengagements that Tesla has is an exponential order of magnitude worse than the actual data being reported to the California DMV. And that data reported to the California DMV will be the basis with which they approve robotaxis. So it was never, it's not that it's getting worse. It's just that Tesla is so far behind, like 46,000 times worse on safety critical disengagements than Waymo in 2023. I mean, it's like,
Okay.
I don't need to say it. That's not even close. So that was
Okay,
the point.
Gordon, do you think Waymo is profitable today, or do you think it will be profitable in the next couple of years?
They're not profitable. We all know that.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So, I mean, they're
That's the other dynamic too. Like everybody talks about.
So the two services, either Tesla versus Waymo, or Waymo is obviously in the same bucket with a bunch of other ones that use LiDAR and a bunch of other radar. They're following different paths. So the way I kind of characterize this is Tesla's following a software-heavy, hardware-light approach, and others are following hardware-heavy to make up for a software that may not be as capable in the future. So we'll see who gets there first and more profitably and more scalably. That's TBD. Adrian?
I'll yield to Meta. He's got his hand up.
Okay, Meta.
Yeah, when you're referring to how the DMV in California, let's just use California as an example, will approve robo-taxis. My question is, have you read how Waymo got the approval to have vehicles without humans in the cars today? And are you familiar with the Waymo safety reports?
Is that addressed to me?
Yes.
Can you repeat the question?
Have you read the Waymo safety reports, and are you familiar with what criteria Waymo had to reach with the California DMV to get the authority to drive without humans behind the wheel?
Yes.
And your conclusion is that they need to receive a certain amount of miles? Because that was not in the reports.
What do you mean my conclusions? That was never something that I said in this space or any space.
You've referred to the number of disengagements per mile. I guess what I'm asking you is, from the reports, what was the criteria that California used to give the approval?
I'd have to go back and read the reports. That's not the basis for my argument. The basis for my argument is simple. Again, I'll repeat it. You look at the number of disengagements for Zoox and the other leaders versus Tesla using Tesla FSDtracker.com. And Tesla is an order of magnitude worse than everyone else. All those other guys have LiDAR and radar. Tesla does not. I'll remind you, the Tesla removed LiDAR at the height of the COVID parts shortages. They also removed parking sensors, fog lights, chips from the steering wheel as well. So I don't know if that was a strategic thing from the perspective of safety or a strategic thing from the perspective of profit.
Meta?
The disengagement data on FSD Beta Tracker has zero information about Zoox and others. And the data you're comparing is apples to oranges because you are comparing disengagements to safety interventions, which are two different things.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm looking at FSD tracker. They say disengagements. That's the word they use.
Right. And critical disengagements is a different metric that they track. And the critical disengagements as defined on that website are not the same as those as defined during the regulatory process. That's much, much more limited. If you look at the safety report, it says, would this have led to a robbery, bodily injury, or damage to the vehicle? Many of the critical disengagements people are reporting also say it made me uncomfortable or I didn't feel safe. No one's going to require them to risk the vehicle actually getting an injury. So there's a difference between the average driver who's just volunteering to input data onto a website and a trained safety driver who is trying to get a legal certification.
Grant?
There's a couple things. Just briefly, I applaud the FSD beta tracker people for doing this, and I would point out that this crowdsourced effort at establishing metrics around Tesla safety exists because Tesla doesn't report any of these numbers. I don't understand how you can claim that this is a made-up set of numbers and it's bad or silly, while claiming that Tesla is doing a great job with transparency. They're completely different things. And Meta, I take your points. I've looked at some of the Waymo stuff. I haven't read it exhaustively, but it is a pretty robust approach to laying out, here's how we're thinking about it. Here are all the things we're doing. I don't know if on some level you're just getting overly semantic. I mean, I would like to hear more, but it's true that the number of disengagements per mile or miles per disengagement are dramatically different between Waymo and Tesla. I think that 300 miles per disengagement, it needs to be like 30,000 before we're talking about robo-taxis. It's orders of magnitude off of what it needs to be. And that more recent blip down to me makes it seem like, yeah, they're not going to be there by August. I could be wrong, but it's just my gut.
So in the safety report, they actually go over this a number of times, that there was no quantitative metric like miles or disengagements or anything else that was used. What was used was back and forth between the engineering teams and the policy decision makers at a human level. They both agreed on how to assess it. So the assessment strategy that was used for Waymo and Cruise was different as well. So that's the core basis of my argument, that people are quoting numbers like 30,000, and I have no idea where these numbers are coming from, because the government bodies are basically saying, we will work with you to figure this out.
Was that to get test drivers behind the wheel, or was that to go with no one behind the wheel? I think it's an important question.
That was for the removal of the driver.
So they didn't use data to make that decision? That seems, I'm struggling to believe that.
No, they definitely used data to make that decision. But remember, there was stages. There was one stage with test drivers behind the wheel. Then at some point, they removed the test drivers from the wheel. I believe what the regulatory body was requiring was, show us how you're convincing yourself this is safe, because the regulatory body doesn't know how to make that decision, but we want to see what your process is. And if you convince us, then you can go forward. So the way Waymo convinced themselves and how Tesla's convincing themselves may differ. But I think that's what the fitness test is here.
So just to read it back, your thought is that at some point this will get good enough that Tesla will go to the DMV in California and say, we think this is now safe enough for people to get behind, out from behind the wheel. They'll get in the back seat, and then the regulators will bless it, but they won't look at data to do that?
No, of course they'll look at data. They've repeatedly said that it'll be a data-driven decision. But what data they look at, what those bars are, what those metrics are, everybody's quoting these numbers as if there's like this gold standard. If you hit that number, you get it. And then they're saying this company's ahead and that company's ahead because these are the numbers to look at. But that's not a fair comparison, because the way Tesla's approaching the problem and the way the other companies approach the problem are completely different. So you can't actually use the same measuring stick for both. And LiDAR is not part of the metrics. There's no these statements are made, but that's not what is in the reports.
I would push back slightly, because I think that the work that Waymo does in laying out why they believe it's a safe vehicle definitely speaks to, having a robust array of sensors at play. And I mean, they definitely talk about the fact that they have multiple sensors that are working to chip away at the risk and make sure that they don't make any bad mistakes. I don't think it's fair to say there's no data requirement and there's no mention of LiDAR in Waymo's document. I think it's just a mischaracterization.
I'm not saying either of those statements. I'm saying there is a data requirement, but the data requirement is contextualized with the company and the regulators. So at some point, Tesla will go to the California DMV or NHTSA, whichever person. I don't know if national is actually even an option, and say, we're ready to start in the program. And that's the moment that they have an obligation to start reporting the miles. You don't actually have to start reporting that data, the quote unquote, they're not being transparent, because Tesla's not employing safety drivers and trying to achieve that at this point.
Agree with that.
Well, great. Now everybody's on the same page. And we can all go home. Gordon, are you happy to? While Gordon figures out the unmute button, I just want to say there's a lot of replies that says, why do you have this guy on the board? Just pick him out, this and that. The fact is, Tesla stock right now is not getting much credit for all the AI efforts. When I look at these interviews, of talking heads, when they list AI companies, Tesla isn't even on the list. So Gordon's views is really more representative right now of market participants' views on the stock. So it is good to have him on here. I think it's good to have him kind of argue the other side so that we can understand what the market is thinking, where the disconnect is, and address those disconnects. Adrian and Gordon.
Actually, I'll yield to Gordon first. He kind of took exactly what I wanted to say.
Gordon.
Yeah, sure. So that comment you just made that Tesla's getting no credit for AI, I don't think that could be any more incorrect. And let me explain. So in the most recent quarter, 95% of Tesla's revenues came from selling cars, nearly 100% of their profit. You look at guys like Adam Jonas, who have the bulk of their price target. I think his price target is 350, is in divisions that aren't autos. You have Dan Ives and Gene Munster every time they go on TV, and I consider them friends, but they talk about Tesla's AI business and how you shouldn't worry about issues in the car segment. Focus on AI. Nearly everyone in the media and the Wall Street analyst community talks about, don't worry about the car business. So for you to say that none of the AI is factored in, that couldn't be any further from the truth. Ford and GM traded.
But you're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say none. I said Tesla is not getting much credits, and you can't point to a couple of people. I can't point to a couple of people, etc.
Hold on. Let me just say this.
But the fact,
their closest peers are Ford and GM. Ford and GM traded roughly 5 and 6 times their 2024 EPS estimate. Tesla trades at like 100 times its 2024 EPS estimate. For you to say respectfully, none of it is priced in. I mean, the numbers just don't match up to what you're saying. In fact, it's all priced in, and it's priced in multiple times, in my view, given those multiples.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. So you think that even if Tesla achieves robotaxi and has Optimus in volume production, do you think it's still going to trade at the current market cap?
I mean, it's valued as if, Adam Jonas gave, Dojo, which doesn't appear in any Tesla 10Q or 10K, doesn't effectively exist from a revenue generation perspective. He gave it a valuation of, I think, like
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. What do you think Tesla's automotive business
Did you hear what I just said? He gave Dojo, which doesn't generate any income for Tesla, a valuation of $300 billion. That's like me giving McDonald's a valuation of $300 billion for selling tennis shoes. I mean,
what do you think Tesla's automotive business is worth today?
I'm sorry?
What do you think Tesla's automotive business is worth today, intrinsic value?
What do you mean? This is public data. Our price target on Tesla year end this year is $23.64. That's what we think.
Just the automotive segment. Just the automotive segment. What do you think is worth?
It's worth something less than that. I'd have to look at some of the parts.
Okay. Well, why don't you pull up your report
But
while
let
AJ
me ask
talks?
you this: how do you say Tesla is not an automotive company when 95% of their revenues come from selling cars? By the way, that's up from 93% 2 quarters ago. How
Well,
do you
I
say
didn't.
they're not an
First of all,
automotive?
First of all, I didn't say that. Okay, you're again putting words in my mouth.
But no, you just said they're an AI company, right? I mean, that's what most bulls say, right? Don't worry about
I said what I specifically said was Tesla is not getting much credit for its AI efforts.
But how can you say that when they're trading at 100 times their 2024 numbers, where GM and Ford, who are their closest peers, traded 5 and 6 times? How can you say they're not getting credit?
I can answer that question. I think these companies should be trading and valued on their EV efforts because EVs are the future. GM and Ford are not producing any compelling EVs today that people want to buy.
Right, but when you say
their
EVs are the
profits
future,
on
sorry. When you say EVs
Yeah,
are the
they're-
future, every single company who has been offered billions of dollars, and not every single company, but most of them have scaled back billions of planned investment, whether it's Stellantis, Mercedes, Toyota, Ford, GM, CATL, Panasonic, they're all scaling back investment in EV. So,
Yeah.
and
because they're
clearly,
EVs. I mean, the EVs that came out with people don't want to buy. So
right,
I
and clearly
can't blame
people are
them for
moving away
scaling
from
back.
EV to PHEV. That's clear. So when you say EVs are the future, you're talking against what we're actually seeing real time. So how do you come to the conclusion that EVs are the future when PHEVs are significantly outperforming in growth and preference, and the people who see EVs better than any of us, who are being offered government money, are pulling billions in investments in the tens of companies? How do you say it's the future
Look,
with those dynamics at play?
Sure. Just from first principles, I do believe that EVs will outperform hybrids. I think Toyota is doing a really excellent job today selling the idea that hybrids are, kind of stepping stone. You don't have to go all the way to the EVs. You don't have to change your lifestyle. Just come to us for now. But I think in the future, a few years down the line, people will realize that this kind of stepping stone decision is the wrong decision. And EVs will win from first principles perspective. I'm going to go to some of the people right now who have their hands up. So Adrian, Kristen, then Grant.
Yeah. So with EVs, there's a bit of a problem here, especially with hybrids as well. Most of the reason why there's such a huge adoption for hybrids is because that's the next best thing we have. The hybrids itself actually outperform the EVs made by the. Okay, so imagine, for instance, that Ford puts out an electric vehicle. That electric vehicle sucks in every way, but their hybrids actually perform better. Okay, so then it looks like as if the EVs are actually performing bad overall, which is actually not true whatsoever. It is that the quality is bad. That's why they're performing bad. And the reason why the hybrids are actually performing well is because there are incentives for the fact that you actually have to buy these types of cars with a low carbon footprint. There's regulation in place that is incentivizing this. You have tax credits, for instance, as one of these motivations. And this, of course, drives up the demand for something like a hybrid. Doesn't mean that the hybrid is better than an EV, not at all. It just performs better because it is better than the same EV that they manufacture. They actually have to manufacture hybrids because the EVs they would manufacture suck. And this is, of course, you can see this right now. And as for Tesla being an AI and robotics company, you could say that they're a car company to the extent that that's what the product that they're selling right now. But in and of itself, they need to actually sell this product in order to scrape the data to basically create the AI that would then make them more of an AI company. It's almost as if you were to say that in the early days of, say, OpenAI, for instance, if I'm going to take a really bad example, but it is an accurate example, that OpenAI was a web scraper company, because that's effectively what they did in the beginning. They scraped the web for information that they then used in the earliest versions of ChatGPT. And of course, they used Twitter data as well, which we're not going to get into. But this is the same type of comparison. You could say that it's just a car company, much like the same way you could say that any kind of AI company is just a web scraper or an image scraper or anything else. But it doesn't mean that it's accurate. For now, they are scraping a lot of data, but they also have an AI product that they're selling. You can subscribe to it right now for $99 a month. It's a product.
This is just a random question, just because Gordon keeps coming back to it. Gordon, have you or have you ever been given a stipend or gift of money from Ford and GM because you continue to advocate for them mostly? And then you talk about how EVs are going down and it's not the best way to go forward. So it just makes me wonder, and I know a lot of people have asked that question, wonder themselves.
That's a ridiculous question. I'm not advocating for anybody. I'm making comparisons. I'm doing comparable company analysis. You guys may see it as advocating, but I'm just simply comparing Tesla to their closest peers, which are Ford and GM.
But you didn't answer the question.
And I won't.
Grant and then Adrian.
Yeah, I mean, what Gordon is doing is something that most Wall Street people will do, which is trying to figure out the value of a business by comparing it against similar companies and their valuations. It's a pretty standard approach to figuring out what something's worth. And I think it's valid. The way that I think about Tesla's valuation today is that there definitely is some level of AI baked into the valuation. My personal, incredibly rough math is that I'll give energy $100 billion valuation. I'll give the auto business $100 billion valuation. I'll give the FSD ADAS about 50 billion, which is also fairly generous. And then the bulk.
How did you come? Okay, let me ask you this. How did you come up with the 100 billion for auto?
I mean, that's a pretty generous multiple. I mean, that's probably still 4x richer than what Ford and GM get. I mean, these are generous numbers. I understand what I'm talking to here.
So give me the numbers you use. 100 billion for auto. Give me the numbers.
I'll say that the EPS coming out of the auto business is going to be $4 this year. And
and that's the problem, right? That's the problem right there. Because you're using a EPS number that is representative of a very restrictive environment. And by the Fed's own words, this is temporary, right? Right now, we have 2 to 3% real interest rate that is historically very high, 10% average new auto loan rate. Why would you use a temporarily restrictive environment to put a multiple on it and say this is the value of the auto business? Why not look at a couple of years when the rates are normalized?
I would argue that this is closer to normal rates than what we had 2 to 3 years ago. If you look back 40 years, we're in a pretty reasonable place.
Are you saying that Jay Powell is wrong? That right now we don't have restricting interest rates?
We don't. I mean, it's restrictive in a relative sense compared to where we were over the last decade.
No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying these rates are high right now for a purpose to bring inflation down. And the Fed expects interest rates to come down, normalize in the coming years. So unless you're telling me that all these PhDs at Federal Reserve is wrong, I think you should maybe consider using a normalized denominator when you're valuing the Tesla auto business.
I don't think it's difficult to claim that the PhDs at the Fed are wrong from time to time. They were not worried about the monetary policy that they were pursuing over the course of the pandemic.
Okay, so I guess that's why we have a market. That's why we have a market, right? So you believe that the Fed is wrong, that these rates are going to be the norm going forward, and other people in the space might believe that the rates will come down in the coming years, and maybe they're using a normalized EPS to value the auto business, and maybe they assume it's not $100 billion, that the leader of the EV industry should be worth more than that, just from the auto business alone. And that's why we have a market.
I think rates will come down some. I just don't think that they're going to go back to where they were 3 years ago. I mean, but I also don't think that it's just rates that are driving the challenges in Tesla's business today.
Okay. We'll get back to that. Adrian?
Yeah, don't bet against the Fed. But if we want to look at, say, standard comparisons to an entity that's above standard, I don't think gives you an accurate assessment of anything. As a matter of fact, like, of course, we can use these standard, tactics of measurement to come up with some sort of analysis, but it doesn't mean that it will be accurate. Especially when we're considering something such as Tesla as a company and as a product. It is just beyond anything we've ever seen before. There's never been an EV quite like this. I'm not saying this because I'm a massive fan of either A, the guy, or B, the tech. No, it's just objectively true. If somebody else were to create a better performing product in any direction, I will, of course, speak about it because it's objectively the best thing out there. And right now, objectively, Tesla is, of course, the best thing out there, and by such a large margin that it basically outperforms everything, including, of course, ICE cars, which is something that is absolutely insane.
Can I speak to this? Because
Yeah.
this guy
Yeah.
who sounds like Elon Musk keeps saying that Tesla's products are the best, etc. Again, he's speaking in vagaries and platitudes. So let's look at the data. So Consumer Reports ranks Tesla's cars in quality nearly last. JD Power ranks Tesla's cars in quality nearly last. This is versus both EV players and ICE players. What car question mark in Europe ranks Tesla's quality last? So when you keep saying Tesla has the best products, this isn't Gordon Johnson. This is Consumer Reports, JD Power, and what question mark? All people who have decades of experience ranking cars, ranking Tesla's quality as poor. So when you say they have the best quality, your statements are shown to be false based on the people who know this better than me and you. Thank you.
Adrian.
We'll see who is folding the most money at the end of the cycle.
Yeah, Gordon, the JD Power quality, what's the definition of quality they're using? And then secondly, how many people actually look at these JD Power lists when they're making buying decisions? Tesla is positioning their products, the way they build products, pricing decisions, to sell more EVs profitably and to be sustainable as a company, as opposed to, let's say, like some people claim that Rivian has better build quality or better interior quality. You can't focus on one specific item and say this automaker is better than Tesla, but it's really the overall value proposition that Tesla is trying to optimize, right?
I mean, do you guys not see the cognitive dissonance here? I mean, it's like I provide you with stats and then you question the stats no matter who it's from. If it's TeslaFSDTracker.com, they're short sellers. If it's Consumer Reports, they're short sellers. If it's you guys not see this?
I never say anything about short sellers, Gordon. I didn't say anything about short sellers.
No, I did it, and it's because, Gordon, we know you sell your research to short sellers. But back to the point about safety, we know the Model 3 achieved the lowest probability of injury of any vehicle ever tested by NHTSA. This was in October 7th, 2018. They received 5-star
a study
safety
with NHTSA. They pulled that information back, and they said that study was wrong. That's incorrect.
So NHTSA.
That's a fact. Do you want me? I could post it to Twitter.
Please, can you?
That information is incorrect. I think you probably know that.
Post it, Gordon, please. Thank you.
Kristen.
I think for those of us who were here in 2018 and 2019, and I think Gordon Johnson, you were here too, because I remember you would continue to say that Elon was a fraud. And so for a lot of us, we've seen the things that have been said, and we don't take it seriously just because Tesla has done so well and Elon isn't a fraud. He isn't Elizabeth Holmes and he's not Trevor Milton, which is a lot what we hear. I mean, Tesla Q and those people that you align with yourself saying so.
I've never said Elon Musk is a fraud. What I've said is the Painted Black video was demonstrably a lie. I believe that. I said that when he filed his filings with Twitter, that was incorrect and it was a securities violation. And I said when he showed the panel for the acquisition of Solar City, it was a fake panel that was never produced. So I've never accused him of being a fraud. I'm just stating things that I see as troublesome and clearly funding secured.
Adrian.
So your standard argumentation for not bring up any specific point, how you seek to invalidate it is with provenance based on a past thing and saying that I'm speaking in vagaries and platitudes. Very interesting. Let me ask you something that's very objective. Have you ever been in a Tesla car for a considerable period of time? And if so, which model?
Yeah, so like I said in the last spaces, I was recently in California. I took a trip from Santa Monica to my cousin's house. It was a 3-hour ride in the back of a Tesla. I was literally so scrunched up. It was a Model 3. My legs were hoisted in the air, and when I got out the car, my legs were numb. Now that's just one experience. My wife has taken numerous Ubers in Tesla cars where she said the rattling was concerning. She's pregnant. So look, but this is just, so to answer your question, I have been in a Tesla car recently. It was extremely uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. My wife was uncomfortable in the back seat, and my cousin in the front seat was uncomfortable. So yes, I've been in a Tesla car, but that's just my experience. That doesn't mean all of their cars are uncomfortable. I've said myself, the Model S car, the one that was introduced originally, and still the ones I see on the road today, beautiful cars. no doubt about it. I mean, great cars. But that's not an indication of what this company's worth. My key contention.
Okay, Grant.
I mean, that's what they're selling, though. It's a product.
Mr. Vagaries and Platitudes himself. I'm joking. I hope we can have some fun here.
So I'm on
Grant.
NHTSA's website right now, and every Tesla car has a 5-star safety rating in every single category. What do you have to say
Okay.
about that, Gordon?
I
Yes,
was actually going to
please,
respond.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
why I'm calling on Grant. Go ahead, Grant.
yeah, Doge Army. I did post a link to the chat. There's a CBS article I have up on my phone. I mean, you know, what Gordon is saying is true. There's an article on
That's not
CBS.
true. Nope, that's not true.
Okay,
Gordon
well, I'm
said,
read the headline.
hold on.
It just says
Okay.
Feds demanded Tesla to stop claiming Model 3 safest vehicle
That's
ever
Grant.
tested, reveals.
Okay. Gordon said, NHTSA said that study was wrong. They pulled it. That is not a correct statement. And the
Okay,
link that you
we
posted
don't have
does
to
not
mince
state
words.
that.
I was talking about the article Grant just mentioned.
Okay. Well, the article says that you can't conclude that. That's why they put, but the study was not pulled, right? So those are two different statements.
Well, they asked Tesla to not make the claims that Doge Army is making. I'm just saying that's true.
Okay. Okay. Meta.
For Grant and Gordon, I posted a link to the actual law from California that outlines what is required in order to get an autonomous vehicle testing license. And when you go through it, you can see there's a whole bunch of requirements. There is a requirement that you have a link for a robotaxi remote control. There are requirements that you make notifications, you make statements about what operational domains are allowed. But you'll notice when you go through that text, there will be no mention of LiDAR, any sensors. There is a reference to disengagements and mileage, but you'll notice that it's only a reporting standard. It is not a qualification standard. And then the other part that you'll notice is the total cost is $3,600 for 10 vehicles, and then $50 for every subsequent 10 test vehicles. There's some other filing fees and stuff associated. But the only criteria in that entire system that would be material is that you cannot make commercial profit through that path. So when Tesla decides to go down that route, the requirements in California would require that they go down this path first, and then they would go through that program and they would receive a permit. The receiving of that permit is, I think, purely time-based, and it's a negotiation back and forth that the process that they have instituted is working as they stated. There are references to the SAE level standards, and when you go to look at those standards, what you'll notice is it's just about certifying the claims that the manufacturer believes they achieved those claims. So very important that whenever everybody says that the laws won't allow it, I used to say the same thing, and the reason why I've backed off that a lot is because I looked into it, and most of the laws as written put the burden of proof on the manufacturer, not the legal bodies.
Appreciate you linking that. I'm looking at it. I will be curious to learn more.
And I appreciate Yaman for hosting these spaces because it's nice to be able to have long form where we can actually just look at the data rather than hypothesizing about it.
Thank you. This space is, by the way, brought to you by my patrons. There's no way this space would be on right now if it wasn't for the patrons. If you'd like to become a patron, the link is at the top of your screens. Adrian?
Yeah, that's why we love Meta. He's always heavy on the data. We absolutely love that. An interesting thing about the experience, about the product itself, if you've not really experienced every single model and you've had like one bad experience, it doesn't really reflect on the entire thing. And I love the fact that you address this, even though slightly. If you've ever driven in a Tesla car, any Tesla car, you'll understand the quality of the product. It takes something like a Cybertruck. I mean, it's difficult if you have a bearish case against any particular product. It will be very difficult for the mind to accept that this product is in fact superior. For instance, imagine if I have a bias against Apple, and I do have a bias against Apple because I absolutely don't like them. It is difficult sometimes to actually admit that some of their products are in fact superior. Like for instance, look at their AI tech. That's far superior in comparison to anything else that anyone else is currently manufacturing. But you have to admit this, and then you also have to use this technology, because this is the objectively, best thing to do. Now, I would invite you to perhaps organize with someone that you drive in something like a Cybertruck. This will transform your life. I'm just saying, you will look at Tesla a little bit differently, and perhaps I think you'd give it a more positive evaluation if you actually experienced such an absolute beast of a product. Like, really, give it its all, walk on it, punch it, throw a 5-pound steel ball at the windows, just really see what it's all about.
Yeah, can I address that?
Yeah.
So we know that Elon Musk said he had funding secured when he didn't have funding secured. We know that he put up a solar panel to sell Tesla investors on acquiring Solar City, who we covered, by the way, and we thought was headed to zero before Elon Musk acquired it. And those panels were fake. We know the Paint It Black video is completely doctored and fake. Reuters reported in December that Tesla blamed driver abuse for chronic failures of their suspensions when they knew that they were defective. Handelsblatt reported the same thing. So, respectively, with those things known, I do believe the Model S is a beautiful car. I wouldn't say the same for the 3 and the X and the Y. But with those things known, respectfully, I'm not interested in driving a Tesla car because, I value my safety. I think you guys can understand that.
Adrian.
What's more safe than a bulletproof car?
Well, one other thing I'd say is I don't hate Tesla. I mean, it was implied that I hate Tesla. I just think the value of the company is far less than what it's trading at. That's not hate. It's just
No.
Gordon,
I was not saying that.
Gordon, just to kind of address the four things that you listed. Tesla and Elon specifically haven't sued for those things, and he was not found guilty. You recognize those facts, right? Gordon?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Elon was sued a number of times, and he was always found not guilty on the things that you listed.
With respect to funding secured, that's absolutely incorrect. But okay. He was removed. He was removed from a number of roles. He has a Twitter sitter, et cetera, et cetera.
He settled with the SEC, but those are different things. Like, he was sued on Solar City, he was sued on funding secured, and he was not found guilty.
Yeah, Tesla has great lawyers, but when you look at that, when you look at the solar panel he held up, that was a fake solar panel. That's what I'm saying.
That's not true. There are solar roofs out there that are, Gordon. There are solar roofs out there that are already installed.
The panel he held up at the unveiling of acquiring Solar City was a fake panel that never saw the light of day.
And you based this off of a Reuters article. Is this correct?
When the iPhone was first introduced by Steve Jobs, are you aware that there was 6 different phones used through the demo, where Steve Jobs walked behind the podium and subtly swapped out the phones so that people wouldn't know, but the end product was actually what was shipped? This is common in demos.
Yeah. Kristen?
I just wanted to point out that Tesla safety is like winning ratings worldwide. So Tesla vehicles are incredibly safe, not to mention the Sentry mode. You will not find a vehicle out there that will protect your car to the degree that Sentry mode will. With all the cameras and everything going on, there is people I know that have had accidents happen where it could have looked like their fault and it was the other vehicle.
Where are you getting
And
this data
because of the
from?
camera.
Or is this your gut feeling? Where is this data
No,
from?
it's from my experts. I can't give it to you, Gordon. I'm just kidding. No, you can find it. We post it all the time. If you follow our accounts, you can see that we post it from it's different from Norway to US. There's different, and I can go ahead and start posting them if we need them above, which is no problem for me.
Where
yeah,
is
I've
this
been in
data
4
coming
vehicles.
from? When you say we posted, is it just single postings you do to Twitter?
No, this is stuff that actually, big media actually does cover. It covers these safeties and it covers the awards.
Big media. So what website can I go to get this safety data that states that Tesla's cars are safer than anything else out there?
First of all, you have not answered about 2 or 3 of my questions about if you were paid by Ford or GM. And also, I've asked you for your data, which you have not put above. So I don't think you have room to ask me where my stuff is, but I'll go get it so you can see it and we'll post it above.
Okay.
Go, Jeremy.
Yeah, so NHTSA's website, Gordon, ranks Tesla's cars 5-star in safety. Is NHTSA wrong? You go to NHTSA.com, type in Tesla, and you'll see that there's 5 stars for every single one of their cars dating back to like 2013. That's objective data, sir.
Okay. Adrian.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back onto the whole Reuters article thing. You're basing your conclusion that, in fact, the solar panel itself was fake or even potentially partially fake. No proof of that, actually. But you're basing this off of a Reuters article. Keep in mind that recently, Reuters made a objectively false claim that had a very large negative impact on the stock for a certain period of time. Now, I would argue and say, if you're such a fan of the SEC, they should be paying a large price for the damage that they did in supplying the demonstrably inaccurate statements, and God knows what else they have claimed, which is completely incorrect. So again, you're basing your conclusion off
let me cut you off there. This isn't based on a Reuters article. This isn't based on
You just said in a Reuters article.
No.
You just said the Reuters
type into
article.
Google, Tesla showed fake solar panel to acquire Solar City. And you'll see that the first article that comes up is a Los Angeles Times article. This isn't based on a Reuters article. The Reuters article stated that Tesla
That's worse, actually.
Hold on, let me finish. The Reuters article stated that Tesla blamed faulty suspension on its drivers when it knew that they were faulty. That's what the Reuters article claimed. And Handelsblatt said the same thing.
Again, it doesn't change anything about the base claim at all. You're citing sources that have made demonstrably wrong claims. So what are you going to do with this? Like, if this is what you're basing your conclusions on, it actually does reflect. It actually does show me and demonstrate to me why most of the statements that you make are kind of inaccurate or even incomplete.
You can say kind of inaccurate if you want. And again, this isn't Gordon Johnson. I'm reading from for instance, again, type in Tesla showed fake solar panel to acquire Solar City. The first article that comes up is from the Los Angeles Times.
Gordon,
the shingle must
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Right.
I'm just saying your sources suck.
Yeah, Meta just explained that, in these, unveil events, he gave the example of Apple's Steve Jobs iPhone event where he changed 6 iPhones. These are common things, demonstration, etc. But, we also know for a fact there are houses out there that use solar roofs. It's just that Tesla's priority right now is not solar roof. Tesla has bigger fish
right,
to
but the
fry,
shingle he
right?
showed, again, the shingle he showed
That's fine. We
was
that's fine.
fake
Adrian
and
agree
never
with you.
produced, ever. It wasn't a
Adrian,
prototype. It was I
Gordon,
can't say it wasn't a prototype. It was never produced. So it was a fake
okay,
shingle that
Gordon,
never
you just
saw
keep
the light of
repeating
day.
something we all agree with you on. That's fine, right? But are you disputing that there are houses out there that use solar roof, generate solar energy using solar roof today? Are you disagreeing with that fact?
No. But
Okay.
are those
right.
panels Chinese panels that have a Tesla logo on them? Are you disagreeing?
Doesn't matter. Listen. Nobody here is claiming that Tesla's value, intrinsic value, should be due to solar roof or Tesla, solar, etc. But you have still. By the way, you haven't answered my question yet. Did you pull up your model? What are your assumptions about Tesla automotive valuation?
I don't discuss any assumptions in in Twitter Spaces. I'm just here to talk.
Well, where do you want to discuss? Where do you want to discuss? Can I get a copy of your?
No, I try to get you guys' view, because when you guys say Tesla's an AI company, and then I provide you stats that their disengagements are like every 50 miles, whereas their competitors are every 177,000 miles.
Okay, so
I'm just trying to understand how you guys are so bullish on quote unquote Tesla's AI.
Okay. The other thing I want to address first is you keep saying you guys say this. This is a very diverse group space. There are bulls in here, bears in here. There are different spectrums of what people believe about Tesla, about automotive, about Tesla energy, Tesla AI, robotics. We discuss and dig into every single one of those things, and we debate. And I encourage debate. We make coffee bets, kind of like a gentleman's bet on disagreements. and we dig into those things. So there's no you guys here, right? But I really would love to learn your assumptions and what you value Tesla Automotive, because that's how we're going to get to like some of the parts and the valuation and see how much value you think the market is assigning to Tesla AI. Okay, Grant, Dojami, then Adrian.
Yeah, just a brief appeal for fair-mindedness here. Mainstream media is in the business of trying to figure out the truth. They report hundreds of thousands of things collectively every day. They definitely get a small portion of those things wrong. They definitely have bias that manifests in different ways. I just want to highlight that if you want to categorically dismiss any reporting from Reuters as ipso facto a complete falsehood, you're likely in a place where you are immunizing yourself to potential sources of truth, and you just need to be careful. That's all I'll say.
Okay, Doja.
I think the same argument is true if you believe everything you see in the mainstream media as it pertains to Elon Musk.
I'll just say, I mean, that's true. It's good to be a skeptical consumer of information across the board for sure, but like maybe assume 95% of what you read in mainstream media is true and half of it has a level of bias, but the raw facts are often true. To go back to the Reuters article that I think Adrian is referencing, it sounds like the semantic distinction that made it false in some people's minds is that it wasn't canceled, it was merely postponed. But they broke that news. It's substantially true. I mean, I don't think that Reuters is out to get Tesla or Elon, and that perception will not serve you well as the stock price is declining and you're sealing yourself off from facts.
The stock price declined based on a thing that Reuters claimed. Now, if you want to look at semantics, I think it's exceedingly critical for a journalist, especially a journalist, because journalists themselves should understand the effect of semantics to such an extent that they in fact bend the meaning of certain words to induce certain types of feelings and sentiments. This is very well known, and if you actually looked at the structure of how any legacy news article is written, it isn't written in a way that is supposed to objectively tell you what's going on. It is written in a way for you to have an emotional response, so you keep reading it and then want to get the next hit. So this is something that you need to consider. And by execution, what had happened is the stock price tanked because what was written created a false sentiment. Now, whether or not this was intended is a completely different argument. The effect is still the same. You can pave the road to hell with good intentions, but it doesn't mean those good intentions are good. Demonstrably, they aren't. This is the exact point that I'm trying to make. And if you're looking at, say, sources of truth, the only reason why I would ever pay attention to something that legacy media puts out is because I need to keep up with government propaganda so I'd know what the next move is. That is literally the only reason why I would ever read such absolute demonstrable garbage. And if you ever think that they have lots of accuracy, I just want you to type my name into a search browser and see what comes up. It is the most stupidest nonsense that you could ever imagine, objectively proven to be true. Actually, funnily enough, the Daily Mail, for instance, we're going to go back to that because they've also posted a lot of nonsense on Tesla. They actually posted something wrong in their corrected article about me after I contacted them. They said I was not available for contact. I contacted them and told them to adjust their nonsense. So legacy media in general, to me, is a shiny turd that is not polishable beyond the point of which it currently is at, and it's just drying out and becoming a very dry lump of fibrous, annoying stuff that just will dissipate into the wind as it should.
All right, Meta, then Gordon, then Doja.
Just changing the topic a little bit. Grant, do you want to discuss the legal body that I posted and your question to it, or do you want to not discuss it in the space?
I'm fine discussing it if Yaman's cool with it.
Let's get the couple hands first and then we can change topics. Gordon, then Doja.
Yeah, again, the guy who sounds like Elon. So you referred to the decline in Tesla stock associated with the Reuters article. But in reality, I think more probably, and I hate to give these percentages because they're so fictitious, but I would say the bulk of the decline in the stock is because of the massive delivery miss. So just respectfully, I don't think it's the Reuters article. I think it's the actual underperformance and lack of performance of the actual company.
John.
I just want to say I think we've learned a lot today. We've learned that the California DMV data for Waymo is being compared to self-reported FSD data that is human-driven and human-supervised, which are completely separate things. And if that does not show you that the bear argument is majorly flawed, then I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, and Kristen sent me a number of tweets, a handful of tweets that have data, links to sources showing Tesla's superior safety pick awards, etc. Gordon, just like you asked, Kristen delivered, and hopefully we'll get your sources. Grant.
When you guys keep saying this, my sources, what are you referring to? I mean, it's like this thing has taken a life of its
Well,
own.
in my case, I just want to see. In my case, I just
What
want
are
to
you
see
referring to?
assumptions
What do
for
you
Tesla
want? What do you
Automotive.
want, quote unquote, my sources on?
Your
Your
expert
assumptions
AI
for Tesla
sources.
Automotive, expert AI sources, etc.
Well, I mean, I've told you what my
Gordon,
sources.
you, but you,
Consumer
so
Reports.
you,
It's JD Power. It's what question mark? What car question mark? It's the California DMV. It's FSDtracker.com, et cetera, et cetera. I'm telling you where this data is coming from. So why do you keep mentioning, quote, my sources as if I'm hiding something? I'm not hiding anything.
okay, what about the sources that Kristen put up at the top?
What did
Don't
she put?
you believe those sources that Tesla has superior safety to other vehicles?
Well, I haven't seen her data.
Okay.
Who is the source of that data? Is it her self-reported data, or is it a
No,
respectable
we have
outfit
the,
like Consumer
there are the,
Reports, who has
there are
been in
the,
business for decades?
let's see,
Is it third-party
Tesla
data,
Model
or is it her own
S,
data?
third party. Tesla Model S and Model Y received the highest overall safety scores among every vehicle tested by Euro NCAP in 2022.
By who?
Euro NCAP.
Okay, maybe if you
Okay.
could post it to Twitter, I'll take a look. I don't.
It's at the top. It's at the top. NHTSA has a 5-star overall safety rating for Model Y, perfect score. In 2020, a Tesla with autopilot engaged experienced 0.2 accidents per million miles driven, while the US average was 9 times higher. Tesla Vision camera and neural net processing system. Autopilot FSD capability safety features received highest superior score ratings in both vehicle-to-vehicle tech, reducing accidents, and vehicle-to-pedestrian crash avoidance tests. 5-star NCAP safety rating handed down to Tesla's newest Australian New Zealand market entrant, Model 3. Model Y secures 2024 IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus Award despite tougher metrics. Model Y earns IIHS 2023 Top Safety Pick Award. You can see these links at the top. Doge Army.
One final comment. I just think it's funny that Gordon has a blue check mark, which means he pays Elon Musk $8 a month. Thank you.
That's it. Okay. All right. Okay. Grant and Meta. You guys want to discuss?
Sure, I'll turn it over to Meta.
I was going to just read your question. Then I thought I'd let you just read your own question. Do you want me?
All right, one of you has to start.
Yeah. So I don't have it in front of me, but high level, I think that the topic is what level of, let's say, miles per disengagement or other safety metric will Tesla need to demonstrate to get to a point where they are allowed to have robotaxis on the road. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah. So the question you were asking was, if I understand it correctly, is it my supposition that there is no requirement before they can do that? And what I'm saying is, based on the body of the text, I'm not a lawyer, but reading the law, it seems pretty plain to me that the requirement for not having a driver behind the vehicle is fully subjectively decided by the manufacturer attesting what their safety protocols are and their confidence on the matter. If we look at Waymo and Cruise, we do see evidence that Waymo for a while chose to have drivers behind the wheel. That was not required by law, that was a choice. Cruise decided to only operate at certain hours. Again, that was not by law, that was their choice. And if you look at the attestations that they can make, there are geographic limitations, time restrictions, etc. The disengagement reporting requirement is not necessarily from the drivers behind the wheel. It's from the remote takeovers that are happening. So whether it's a remote takeover from a driver behind the wheel or the operator that is legally required, that's different. There are requirements about having a program, certifying that every single operator has gone through the program, explain to legal enforcement, law enforcement, how to deal with things, having a commercial phone number on the outside. There's all these like new minutia of requirements, none of which I think we would get stuck up on. I think the only thing that we could discuss maybe is the mobile operator, which I'm happy to explain why that's not a big hurdle for them to achieve.
Yeah, I just want to. So first, I appreciate what you're endeavoring to do here, but I also think that you're getting way too in the weeds. When you make the comment that Waymo was not legally required to have a driver behind the steering wheel, that may be technically true, but I also don't believe that the California DMV would have said, "Hey, robotaxis, no one behind the wheel. Great, let's just go out of the gate without someone there." I think that what you're describing is that this is a process where there's a negotiation and a mutually agreed upon, approach is developed between the manufacturer and the regulator, and then they go from there. So, I mean, yeah, it's true that this document does not have a ton of hyper detailed stuff around X number of miles per disengagement, but there are going to be requirements. Let's say, assessments made around the safety of the vehicle or the technology, and that's what's going to be required in order to get it on the roads.
Right, but if you look at the body of the text, it says that the manufacturer must supply how they did the testing. It does not say that they must meet a bar for
Look,
that
I
testing.
mean, neither of us are lawyers. I don't really want to debate the body of this text. Like, I've never read California legislation before. I mean, it's fine if you think you have conviction on this based on what you're reading, but I definitely don't based on my knowledge that I'm not a lawyer. I just think it's going to be more complex than you may be acknowledging. I don't think that you can look at this document as a non-lawyer and say, I now have definitive proof that there is no minimum, disengagements per mile thing. Like, we just don't know.
I mean, we don't know if they require it to be launched when there's a full moon either by that same standard, right? But we can reasonably conclude that there's no legal requirement. We can conclude that when people are making statements that LiDAR is required or that safety test drivers are required or disengagement data is required, all those statements were not grounded in what the actual requirements were. And it doesn't take a lot to look these laws up.
Yeah, but here's my counterpoint. Again, I'm not trying to get too in the weeds on this, but I don't think there's any way in hell that Waymo would have been granted permission to just go out of the gate, no one behind the wheel. Okay. The document doesn't say they need someone behind the wheel, but that's because the document doesn't say everything that's actually going to be required to get this on the road. Does that make sense?
The document explicitly states that you can get a permit for up to 10 vehicles without somebody behind the wheel if you attest that that's the case and you show how law enforcement is supposed to deal with it and you have your remote monitoring and you can show that the remote monitoring procedure works. Effectively, what I'm trying to say is as long as you have a remote operator able to take over the vehicle in a reliable way, you're allowed to not have a driver behind the vehicle. That's what the law is saying.
The law is one thing and the application of the law is a different thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, I agree with what you're saying. Like, it doesn't say anything explicit about this or that or this or that, but like, you don't know that Tesla can just go to the California DMV tomorrow, say, hey, we're good, and get a rubber stamp regardless of what that text says. That's my stance.
Okay. Yoda, welcome. How are you?
Good. I have a question, but it's a different topic for Gordon. So I just want to see first if I can ask, or you want to continue on the current topic.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think it's very hard to predict the future on a product like FSD, and we can disagree all day. But my question for Gordon is, perhaps if we look at another technology that Tesla worked on, the North American Charging Standard, and hindsight's 2020, so we know that all the legacy automakers are now adopting that standard. What do you think logically happened with that standard and what happened that led to the other automakers, competitors, to adopting that technology, because what the implication of that is that their customers are going to pull up to Tesla branded supercharging networks to charge their vehicles.
Right. Thanks for that question. Let me be very clear here. So it was very clear that Biden said that if Tesla wanted credits, they had to open up their charges to other automakers. So the reason why Tesla opened up to other automakers was to be eligible for the credits included in the Inflation Reduction Act, the ill-named Inflation Reduction Act. Number one. Number two, 90% of charging is done at home. Number three, Tesla is not being paid for other automakers to use their chargers. They're doing this effectively for free for other automakers. So if you buy a Tesla car, you take a road trip with your family, you potentially have to wait in a line behind a bunch of GM, Mercedes, etc. cars that can now charge at Tesla chargers. This is not a positive, it's a negative. Not only from the perspective of it not being revenue accretive, but from the perspective of it being a disadvantage / nuisance to potential buyers of Tesla cars, i.e., their supercharger benefit no longer exists. Does that answer your question?
Not not really, but I appreciate your answer, because that's definitely a different kind of angle than maybe what I would have looked at the situation. Maybe just as a follow up, uh, regardless of whether it's beneficial or not for Tesla, the lineups that you cited, I would take it that for the Fords and the GMs of the world, they would not, even though there's no cost, they would not want their customers to go there. It's almost like if you're a cafe and you want your customers to go to Starbucks for some reason to refill, or even gas stations, I guess, for that matter. One brand of gas stations pointing their customers to another brand of gas stations. So, what do you think really made the Fords and the GMs sign the dotted line to give up their customers to the charging stations?
Yeah, that's a gross I guess diagnosis, I would say. So if I was Ford, and instead of having to invest hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to build out a charging network, I could just use Teslas. That's an easy decision to make. I think the problem here is a number of analysts and media talking heads position this as a huge benefit to Tesla when it was the exact opposite. Again, number one, 90% of charging done at home. So superchargers aren't that profitable in the first place. But opening up your supercharger network to everyone else, i.e., you had to invest in that, and everyone being able to use it is a huge benefit to everyone else. With respect to it benefiting Tesla from a sales perspective, the Q1 data suggests that's, again, the exact opposite. Tesla sales in the US plummeted in Q1. When they've opened their charging network up. So I think you're characterizing a lot of things incorrectly, respectfully.
Gordon, are you implying that Tesla sales or deliveries went down because of one of the chargers? And if so, how do you explain the fact that others are not seeing a surge in their EV deliveries?
No, I'm not saying they went down because of the chargers. What I'm saying is, anecdotally, it's not been a benefit. I think Tesla sales in the US are collapsing because people are moving away from EVs because EVs aren't efficient for normal car owners. They're niche cars for people who, have 2, 3, 4 cars. They're not applicable to your normal, person who's an average, blue collar worker. That's number one. I also think that some of the commentary from Elon Musk may have rubbed some of the core constituencies, i.e., the liberal kind of green voting bloc against his cars, and I think that also hurt. But I think the real issue is, people just don't want EVs because they don't want they have range anxiety, et cetera. They're not efficient, et cetera.
Well, okay, hold on. So, how do you explain then the fact that people who have owned Teslas come back to buy another Tesla at a very high rate? I mean, Tesla is the industry leader in terms of repeat customers. If that were true, that would not, what I just said wouldn't be true, right? And then secondly, Tesla has reduced its prices quite a bit over the last 18 months. And I don't think it's also true that EVs are more expensive than ICE variants at this point. I may have been true in the past, but not sure. anymore.
You just made my point for me. I mean, so a Tesla used car from peak to trough is down, I think, close to 55%. That's from I think August of 2022 to today. Car Guru's data.
Okay, so
The average,
you
hold
do
on,
agree that
let me finish.
Tesla's affordable though?
Let me finish. So the
Okay.
average price of a car, right? The average car on that same website over that same time frame is up 35%. And despite that fact, Tesla just went X growth, right? Their sales in Q1 of cars down year over year, down quarter over quarter. So despite
Well, okay,
them
hold on,
slashing prices,
Gordon, hold on.
Yeah.
First of all, the data you cited is for used cars, right?
Okay. Okay.
And you're comparing that to new car deliveries, so that's not the same thing.
Well, no,
Those,
the reason
again,
why the
apples
used
to
car
oranges.
prices are falling is because Tesla is slashing the prices of its new cars. There's no doubt. I mean, so Tesla's slashing the
fine.
prices of its cars. They're not operating at 100% utilization. They have record inventory. They built a record level of inventory. Inventory up 50% in Q1. Yet their sales dropped year over year and quarter over quarter. I mean, that is a disastrous outcome. That means that people aren't coming back to buy their cars if they can't sell the same amount year over year.
No. That's not what. First of all, Gordon, I'm having to kind of just you're throwing a lot at the wall to see what sticks, and I'm having to address each one, which is fine. We can do that. But the fact is, like you're saying, their inventory surged, but Tesla's days of supply is industry leading, even lower than Toyota. That's a fact. Okay. And you didn't address S&P Global data that Teslas have high customer retention, which is also an indication of high demand, high satisfaction by their customers. What do you have to say for that?
I don't know what data set you're talking about. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I just don't know what data set you're talking about. But again, taking a step back, if their sales are dropping year over year with massive price cuts, that's not a good thing.
Adrian?
You do realize that the auto industry itself is suffering within this exact period of time, like collectively. You can see the trend lines are actually almost the exact same. So it's not.
The auto SAR in March was up year over year. The auto SAR in Q1 was up year over year. Tesla sales in Q1 were down year over year.
I was saying we're having a bad day in the market, just in general across the board.
I'm respectfully, I don't know.
It's a big ticket item. It's a big ticket item.
Everybody's experiencing negative sales. The data shows that's not correct. Tesla sells down year over year. The auto industry writ large up year over year, Q1.
Gordon, do you accept that there are multiple factors that play on demand and supply at any given point, that you can't just point to one factor and say this is why?
Yeah, so let me tell you guys why fundamentally we're negative, and then I got to run, and I'll entertain any response to this. So I think I said this in the last call, but I'll say it again. So our viewpoint is when COVID happened, it was the best thing that could have happened, and let me explain. So what happened was, and you can Google all of this. This isn't Gordon. This is actual data. Effectively, there was an auto part shortage, right? And to qualify in a new automobile, it takes about 2 years to qualify in a new chip, right? We had a auto chip part shortage. Tesla was qualifying chips in 2 weeks, right? So not only did they do that, but they removed LiDAR, they removed parking sensors, they removed chips from the steering wheel, which their customers later complained about, and fog lights. I would argue their cars became less safe. So we know that used cars were selling more for the new equivalents. So that was an auto market the likes of which we've never seen. So what happened? Tesla's margins went from negative to positive. Everybody said they're the greatest producer in the world. And they said, Elon's factories are alien, whatever they called them, right? But in reality, our view, this is GLJ's view, was Tesla skirted safety rules to have cars available when no one else did. And now that everyone has chips and parts available, Tesla's margins are regressing to the mean. What does that mean? I don't know, because I think that their margins are going to be significantly lower in Q1 than they were in Q4. So my point is this: selling EVs, everybody says Tesla's profitable. I don't think we know the answer to that yet, because I think when their margins regress to the full mean, they may actually be selling cars at a loss. And I think that's the fundamental problem with Tesla. It's not hate for Musk, not hate for Tesla. I just, EVs are loss making, and that's why you have billions of dollars being pulled. I'll entertain any questions, and then I got to run.
What's your forecast for Q1 bottom line, Gordon?
I can't discuss any of that on this call.
Are you forecasting a negative bottom line?
Again, I can't discuss any of that on this call.
Okay. Do you believe that today's market conditions represent a normal market?
So I just want to highlight one thing, and these are good questions. Thanks for them. So from 1960 to 2008, the average Fed funds rate was roughly 4.9%. That's what the Fed funds rate averaged over that time frame. In fact, before the global financial crisis, the neutral rate the Fed was using, the Lubick model, was 4.2%. That was the neutral rate. Right now, they're using the Williams model, which is roughly 2.6%. So my point is, in a normalized environment, the Fed funds rate is 4.6%.
No,
right?
no,
That's normalized.
You're claiming
not the Fed
that
funds rate. I'm sorry, the neutral rate. I'm sorry, the neutral rate is roughly 4% in a normalized environment. The Fed is using 2% now. Let me just say this: everybody who says financial conditions are tight, that's factually incorrect. You can look at the Goldman Financial Conditions Index. I think Bank of America has one as
Gordon,
well.
that's not what nobody said that. You're making a straw man argument.
No.
One
you
said
guys did say
financial
that.
conditions.
You guys just said that rates are going to drop because
incorrect.
financial conditions are tight. I'm telling you, they're
That's
not tight.
No one said that. You're making a straw man argument.
Okay, but
financial conditions are
to answer your
different.
question, is this a normal environment? The answer is yes.
Financial conditions are different from neutral rate and R-star.
No, but you're asking me. You're asking me, are we in a normal
audience.
environment? And Elon Musk continues to use this argument that rates are the reason why his cars aren't selling. My point is, if you look at, again, history, and if you look at what the neutral rate the Fed was using before the global financial crisis, which was 4%, this is a normalized environment. In fact, rates need to go a little higher. And with that, I got to run, guys. Thank you.
You're repeating your points, but you're kind of making a claim that history is what's going to be the norm going forward. And we haven't kind of established why that is. Okay. Grant.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon has a much more antagonistic style than I do, but I would definitely highlight that for people who have been investors for the last decade, it may not be intuitive that where we are from an interest rate perspective today is actually much more in line with historical norms than where we were the last 5 years. That's an important thing for people to understand.
It's important. I think it's a good point and it's factual, but it's also irrelevant. Because what really matters to the stock is or the markets in general, is going to be what's going to be the norm going forward. And unless you're claiming history is going to repeat itself, you haven't completed your points.
My point is that going forward, we are likely to be at a higher interest rate environment than we were the last 5 years. That's absolutely true.
Okay, I agree with you on that. But are you claiming that 10% average new car loan rates are going to be the norm going forward? Is that your claim?
I don't really know anything about the new car loan market, but I do believe that we'll see some rate cuts, but we're not going back to where we were. That's important for people to understand.
Yeah, I agree. But then you should also say today's bottom line EPS is not representative of a normalized market going forward. If you believe that there's going to be cuts, which also probably means all the loan rates are going to come down. They're not going to stay at 10% average going forward, which means today's order rates, prices, profit margins is not representative of a forecast for the next 5-10 years.
I guess, but I mean, maybe they're 9.5. Like this interest rate cuts are not.
Well, that's why we have a market
that people hope for.
That's why we have a market. That's why we have a market.
Well, I think it's what the market is saying right now.
That's not true. The market is not saying there's going to be 2 cuts and that's it. Adrian. Okay. Buying your time. Can you guys hear buying your time? Okay, JB.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on the rate conversation. Rates are not normalized, and they won't be normalized. And the Fed chairman has talked about this until we all stop talking about a potential rate cut. When we're all talking about rate cuts, we can't normalize rates because buyers will hold off and wait for the rate cut, whether it's a house, a car, or whatever, and that's what's hurting it. So it's better to just actually get to rate normalization, which we're not there until the Wall Street chatter will stop and the bank chatter will stop. That's all I want to say.
Okay. Adrian, are you ready to talk?
Sorry, the connection issues. I'll yield to Grant until I get my bearings again.
Okay, we have a couple of hands before Grant, but political reality. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, in terms, I have lots of things to say, but we'll stay on the topic. From a rates perspective, whoever it was that was talking about the historical mean, I don't think it's fair to say history won't repeat itself. It's not that there's a historical event with respect to rates. That's the mean over the course of 40 plus years. And right now, new car rates are not 10%; they're closer to 7%, and it's unlikely
Incorrect. Average, according to Cox Automotive. Incorrect. Sorry, I have to move you down because you're making a factually wrong statement. Average new car loan rates today, according to Cox Automotive, is 10%. Okay. I think we have so many speakers right now that are willing to. I'll send you the data. Council, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question about Gordon Johnson. But I know he's not here, but he keeps referring to his GGL firm as we. But isn't he just one man team? Like, who is he referring to?
I mean, do you want to say anything about the points he made? Right, whether GL, whatever research is, 2 people, 1 person, or 10 person, does that make a difference to the points he made? Grant?
I don't think I've got anything to add. I just think that the rates are unlikely to come down as much as people would like. The geopolitical stuff is going to push the cost of oil up. That's, going to have an inflationary impact, makes it harder for the Fed to cut.
Well, you're making a macro forecast and others have other forecasts. That's why we have a market. But, I couldn't get you to say, it sounds like you don't believe today's market is representative of the next 5 years. So you agree with me that the rates will come down, so that I think you should kind of step up and say earlier what I said about using current EPS, 2023 EPS is not the right way of doing it. Like, at least can you say that?
I think we're aligned on rates coming down. I think we disagree on the extent to which they'll come down. I'm not interested in making a dozen excuses for why Tesla isn't performing. I'm betting against the stock. And while you could pro forma EPS to death and show a positive result, the fact is it's in a bad spot. It's just bad.
I disagree. But to address political reality, I just posted at the top Cox Automotive data, the chart that shows new loan rates being average 10%. 14% for used car.
That is not accurate at all. Bank rate has the new car loan rate for a prime borrower at 6.99%.
Okay, so again, you're talking about a prime borrower versus an average loan rate.
Well, a subprime borrower is not buying a $60,000 car.
Well, Teslas are not going for $60,000. So I have to move you down because
borrower is
clearly,
not buying.
Sorry, the only people we're going to have on the board are people who are who at least respect the facts, can get the facts right. That's why we have, Gordon can rub some people the wrong way, okay? But he at least is pointing to facts and, at least sharing some sources, at least has some coherent arguments that are actually representative of an average market participant about Tesla today. So I think it's important to have that in this space. On the other hand, if somebody is manufacturing facts, that's just a waste of time. And we're not going to have those people. Adrian.
Yeah, I think it's also good to have a devil's advocate. And I mean, a lot of people do say that he's a clown. And maybe this is true to a certain extent, but I think it's good to actually test your logic against something, especially when it comes to something like this. And I mean, this is really important for us as well, because this is the kind of market sentiment that I think is enforced by false information. So we have the unique opportunity to understand what exactly the talking points are and which are most valuable, because those are the talking points that he's going to bring to you. So we have a unique opportunity to learn this and then to adapt next time and actually provide facts in the face of all this stuff. So it's actually kind of good. I mean, I enjoy this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Otherwise, I wouldn't come back here. I'm not a fan of drama whatsoever. And this is not really drama. It's just basically seeing, here's a bunch of assessments based on a bunch of data. Here's our assessments based on this data. Here's why your data is perhaps even either wrong or doesn't have the sufficient context. And here's what we have. It's a nice little practice. It's fun. It's like chess. There's no actual purpose behind chess other than to understand your opponent, really.
Thank you. Wes, welcome. How are you?
Hey, thanks. Can you hear me okay? This is the Cybertruck's microphone.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Can I make a comment on Gordon's stuff?
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing him on. I appreciate the bears coming on, even though it's a little difficult to hear sometimes. And I thought you countered really well with the days of inventory. I think that's super important for people to understand. And you've posted that chart or the bar graph a couple times, I think. I think that's the thing. That's the thing that I look at when I'm hearing facts. Well, I would just say cherry-picked facts that I've been hearing from Gordon for almost a decade now of how he displays data. Is that it's really important to understand that the days of inventory is still really low. So Tesla chooses to accelerate everything that they do, autonomy and sustainable transportation. So Elon just doesn't think like a normal CEO in that respect. I mean, he doesn't think like a normal CEO in almost every respect. That's why I loved working for him. But he chooses to do things in a way that accelerates the transition faster. And so I think we're going to see over time that there's no issue, because Gordon's been predicting issues for a long time now and they've just never surfaced. So there you go.
Thank you. And I added the days of supply data at the top of our screens if you'd like to look at that chart. This is a chart that's shared by Cox Automotive, but falsely, it is reported widely that Tesla does not reveal or share its days of supply, which is false. Tesla does that every quarter in its investor letters. So I added a small, to the left of that graph, Tesla's data, so that you can see Tesla is actually leading the industry in terms of inventory management. Okay. This space has been going on for more than 3 hours. I think we had very good productive discussions. It got heated sometimes, but I think it's all good. I think everyone who joined the discussion will come back for further debate, which fact checked each other real time, which is hard to do sometimes, but I think it's important and it's a benefit of these long form spaces as opposed to 30-second, 60-second sound bites on mainstream media. So I encourage people to go back and listen to it again. Or if you've kind of joined us later on, listen to the beginning, the middle, lots of good discussions. You can scroll back and forth here on X. We're going to be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Time. Thank you very much, everybody. This space is sponsored by my patrons, and I really appreciate it if you could join my Patreon. The link is at the top of their screens. Thank you very much, everybody, and I will talk to you tomorrow.